Good evening, everyone. I am the Mad Computer Scientist. On this channel, I discuss math, computer science, and technology topics that are of interest to me, although I haven't had much of an opportunity to do that lately, and one of the reasons I have not had an opportunity to do that lately is because I have been so busy. I am taking a my sound playing in the other ear, so let's take that back so it's not distracting to me. Now, as I was saying, one of the reasons I have not had the opportunity to do it lately is because I've been busy. I'm working on a master's in data science, and I'm also taking a Calc 2 class which I do not have to pass, but I still need to take it because I need to take it because I will need it later. Now, we did hit the 256 subscriber mark recently. We lost one, but we'll probably gain it back shortly enough. I'd like you, if you have not already done so, to like, comment, and subscribe. If you find this content useful, share it out. And of course, be sure to ring that notification bell if you hit subscribe, so you'll always get updates of the latest releases. Now, once I am done with this semester, I do plan on getting around to some other projects I've meant to get around to, like the video on bubble sort, along with some other math topics I should probably cover. Tonight, however, we are going to cover a math topic, kind of. We're going to cover a recent podcast that featured Billy Carson and Terrence Howard. Now, I'm wondering how much I hate myself on this one, because I did give people the option of voting on whether they wanted me to cover this podcast or not, and they voted that they wanted me to. With that being said, let's get into it. And it might help if I shared the video I'm sharing, just so you guys can hear it too. Give me a second here and I will share it. I hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving, and I hope we're all recovering from the overeating we did.
In 1977, I saw something in my backyard that I perceived to not science to rewrite books.
This is the fractal.
Yes.
You wrap yourself in the key of that
How exactly is that shape a fractal?
other galaxy, or the edge of that galaxy. You wrap yourself up in that vibration. Guess what? You don't need to use any energy except maintaining that vibration, and the universe will move you over here.
You know, advanced.
If you have any idea what Terrence Howard meant by that, please let me know. Now, I do have to say it is a nice hat, but Terrence Howard, either wear the hat or wear the hoodie. Commit to one or the other. Don't wear both at the same time.
Beings exist. You didn't say alien. Advanced beings. They thought I was just crazy. All Satan and devil worship and.
I can't imagine why anyone would think you're crazy if you're spouting off things about devil worship and Satan.
You know, all this kind of stuff. Anything that I questioned. I'm always good when they need some money, though. When they need some money, I'm always a good. The money is good. The devil money is always good when they need the money.
And then they thank Jehovah for you giving them the money.
Boxes. I cannot fit in the boxes. Stop it. Quitting was never an option.
And why did we just see the Eye of Sauron?
Exhausted. This passion is never exhausted.
Holy heck, I have no idea.
And you cannot stop it.
And we are not covering the full 2 hours of this.
Nah, you cannot stop it.
In the hit film Big Mama's House.
All right. So this is apparently 5 minutes of this. We're going to skip past this as well.
That was not good. My backyard is not really cooperative. With,
But you know what? I appreciate you sticking it out for over an hour and a half with the mosquitoes in the heat. I mean, you kept moving around to get away from the bugs, and you came through, man. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, that was hard because my wife, she was like, "What are you doing?" She's my manager.
Yeah.
So she always wants to run through the business side of it, and I was like, "This is."
And I don't know how many of you could not hear me, but apparently my mic was unplugged.
This is outside of our business.
Okay, we're going to skip this as well because I don't really care about Terrence Howard's personal life, and we all know he has something of a history as a domestic abuser.
They said that Yaqub was in jail because he had apparently cut off some man's genitals who had urinated on the masjid.
Okay.
Now I'm like, this is a child of God.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I don't care what my son does.
Right.
I am a child. Oh wait, wrong religion.
Would much rather you come and tell me than don't mutilate my child out of thinking you're respecting me. Don't kill your brother in this way, even if he doesn't know that he's your brother yet. So I began to question that, and then I questioned the idea of equanimity and justice. You know, how can just God burn someone forever? This is going back to the Bible.
Yeah.
For something that they have done, even if it was heinous.
Well, Mr. Howard, the way I personally resolve that one is I don't believe the God of the Bible, as he's described, really is the God of the universe if there is one. I think it's amazing how many people want to worship a God that is exactly as petty as they are. But as we'll see, most people don't have a Messiah complex unlike you.
For 30, 40, 50, 60 years, there's no way I could burn my child that went wayward forever and torment them forever, calling myself a loving God. So then I had to look at the doctrine and where it was leading me to and what was the necessity of it. And you have to look behind the curtain. You have to ask the hard questions. And yeah, that had a lot to do with me looking for truth. And
you know, a lot of us have looked behind the curtain and found some old man shouting us, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
The Bible did say something that impressed me. It said that God was suspending the circle of the earth above nothing at all. And
by the way, I may open this up to commentary from others. Just let me know.
This is at a time when everyone considered the earth to be flat.
Right. And you're going back now.
Excuse me.
That's okay.
And I'm like, wow, he's suspending. How would they know that he's suspending the circle of the earth above? And then there was another point in Job, it says, where God was four angels are at the four corners of the earth holding back the winds. And I'm like, how does a sphere have four corners? You know, so that ignited a desire towards geometry and understanding it. And that's what the all shape ultimately was. Those four corners, you know, that discovery. And all that came from Walter Russell and him speaking about the doubling sequence in the 1, the 2, the 4, the 8, the 16. That process, but the necessity in order for anything to be measurable, it had to have four equal and opposite or measurable dimensions.
Exactly.
That blew my mind because there was no.
All right, so let's go on to a couple of things here. First, I don't know what he means by the all shape. Secondly, the word that is translated as as corners in the Bible can also be translated as quadrant. Secondly, I am impressed you have correctly rattled off powers of 2. Maybe you will not be as bad at computer science as you are at math.
No longer this 3 that we've been hit with. It was this 4, and when I started applying that.
Oh, and one more thing. You can measure things without it having 4 dimensions. In fact, sometimes you can measure things when it doesn't have any dimension.
All the other things open.
You just unfolded.
So the Bible did play a part with that. My father's desire to seek truth had a big part in that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know that you mentioned before on a few.
Was that before or after he murdered the person in line? when you were going to see Santa Claus?
Podcast that, your journey in quantum physics really began with yourself.
Yeah.
And how does one begin? And I'm in the same boat as you, obviously, but I want other people to hear, like, what was your journey in learning quantum physics?
Well, you should start by actually learning it. That would be a good start.
Well, you hear these stories about Einstein or these great inventors or physicists, but then the information and the theories that they present are contradictory to each other. And I was like, how are these things making any kind of progress or attempting to assist progress into advancing any math or any technology if they're...
Oh, for heaven's sake. Mr. Howard, a lot of computer engineering is all about avoiding certain quantum effects. Now, if we ever do succeed in quantum computing, it'll be because we have learned how to manipulate quantum effects to compute things effectively. Right now, we can do some impressive things on quantum computers, but they're not commercially viable.
They're all in conflict, and I kept waiting. I thought by the time I got 30 or 40, all of these, whether string theory was real or not, it would be proven, or whether relativity was real or not. I was like, Einstein never received a Nobel Prize except for his work on the photoelectric effect, and that was Max Planck's work.
No, he actually did do the work on the photoelectric effect. This is wrong.
Right.
That he was just verifying, but Einstein didn't get none of his stuff really came to full fruition. But he's still considered as this prop placed up by science, but I couldn't get any understanding from that. So I started looking.
As this prop placed up by science, do you consider the words you're using before you say them, Mr. Howard?
Into the people that were questioning, that were enemies of Einstein's ideas in a sense. So I went into Lorentz, who in 1905, who had his own idea regarding the electron and the superpositioning of models of how everything behaved. But his stuff was based off of Maxwell's work, and Maxwell's work was...
Terrence Howard, I didn't understand some of the words you just said, and I know you didn't. Triceratops is not a Sauroptian dinosaur.
Was based off of an ether. Everyone believed that there was this subspace ether, this fabric of space. And so I looked into their work and John Keely's work and Victor Schauberger's work.
His work.
But fortunately for me, the Ascension fans, we know the real reason they killed off the ether is because the technocracy wanted to. No, there is no ether, Mr. Howard. It was disproven by the Michelson-Morley experiment.
Was incredible. I mean, I remember doing an episode in Deep Space, a TV series I did years and years ago, and I had to study Victor Schauberger, and just like blew my mind.
That he was so conscious.
Oh my goodness.
And passionate about you're killing the forest. This forest is dead. You've killed the water. How in the world do you kill the water?
Right.
Dr. Yamoto didn't come out with that until what, the...
This person is not a doctor. He's a businessman.
80s?
80s, yeah.
And he was offered $1 million by James Randi to prove what he said under controlled conditions, and he never took James Randi up on the offer.
And Victor Schauberger had been talking about that since the late 1800s, the living water.
Yeah, he was ahead of his time. For sure.
So those were influences that led, but I had to go in search of that. I went to school for chemical engineering or apply for electrical engineering.
He actually did not do this, but let's continue.
But I was looking at the antiquated way.
Okay, let's continue his claim with that. There is no proof he ever went to any university. He does, in fact, have an honorary doctorate in humanities from the University of South Carolina, but his claims of attending Pratt University for chemical engineering cannot be true because at the time he attended Pratt, Pratt had stopped its chemical engineering program.
In which they were dealing with the universe or their approach to it and asking questions, and they didn't have an answer. They didn't have an answer. It was not sufficient for 96% of the universe to be unknown.
Unknown.
And how does that matter? Just because we don't know what dark matter is exactly doesn't mean we still can't do a lot with the things we do know about baryonic matter, which we don't call dark matter.
Dark matter, dark energy, which is still unknown.
Unknown,
yeah.
Unknown, unknowable. And the 4% that they have out there, the speed of light, that's not a true constant in it because light changes its speed depending on the medium.
Mr. Howard, before you say anything about physics, you need to have a basic understanding of what certain things mean. And this has been your problem with math too. You don't understand that in math, definitions are prescriptive, not descriptive. This is why your multiplication doesn't work. Multiplication is not defined in math the way you define it. The problem here is that you are trying to say that the speed of light isn't a constant. And you're trying to use the fact that the speed of light varies in other mediums other than a vacuum, means it's not a constant. The actual saying is that the speed of light in a vacuum is a constant.
Medium it goes through, that's like having the speed of the human race. You know, black people are going to run differently than white people, than Asians. Everything is going to change. It's a conditional fact.
Yeah,
you're going to change according to the conditions, and light adjusts depending on the conditions. So
not sure what that had to do with anything.
a lot of those things I saw as unrealities, and I couldn't rely on them.
Gotcha.
So that was me. What about you?
Well, me, you know, yeah, it was really interesting. I loved science when I was in school, science and chemistry. I was really good at it. But
really? Because I love computer programming and Pascal.
I didn't have a thirst for it until around 2010. So around 2010,
how old were you then?
39 years old. And, you know, I had already been studying aerospace technology for years. I studied aerospace technology since 1977. In 1977, I saw something in my backyard that I perceived to not be an airplane. I didn't know about UFOs. I didn't know.
You know, seeing unidentified aerial phenomenon is not studying aerospace technology.
About aliens or flying saucers. I just knew what I saw was an orb, a little bit longer or elongated than an egg, glowing metal, and it moved across the horizon in seconds, not minutes. It didn't have a cockpit, didn't have wings, didn't have windows on it or anything. And it came back and stopped completely silent, and it just disappeared again. I ran in the house and told my mom, and she was like, there was advanced beings in the ancient past. And she told me about Machu Picchu. She said they used to live on tops of big mountains. And that was in 77. Fast forward, that gave me a quench and a thirst for technology, just understanding aerospace, swept wing, delta.
Yes, we can do that. I think I skipped past the point where he spells parents with tours as well. But honestly, I'm not going to pick on spelling mistakes quite a bit.
Wing, ballistics, and everything else. I studied all that stuff for years. Didn't get really deep into the science other than basic high school science. But in 2010, when
And why do you still fail it so badly?
I was 39, something really changed. I had an experience, a very strange experience at my house with, I don't know exactly what it is. I mean, I talked about it in a few podcasts before. I felt like an otherworldly experience that I had. But after that experience happened, something happened to me with wanting to understand science at a deeper level, into quantum physics. And I really started deep diving into physics. A lot of the same people you mentioned, I was researching them, studying them heavily. And
a lot of them weren't even physicists.
Went to Khan University, Khan.
Khan is not a university. I'm not saying Khan Academy isn't a good resource. It is. Like, it'll help you get through the math you've forgotten in high school if you need to. It'll help you learn math that you actually need to know, or other subjects that you might be interested in. But Khan Academy usually stops at, like, the very lowest of college levels, and you don't really graduate from Khan Academy, I think. I'm not sure. Also, I think it still is free.
Used to be free, but now you have to pay, I think, a minimum like $10-15 a month or something like that right now online, an online university for quantum physics. So I went there online, started taking those courses, and I was able to understand all this information. And it was so incredible. I just kept diving deeper. And then I opened up a Facebook group for quantum physics on Facebook, and it grew to like 139, 140,000 students. And I would help them answer questions in there and so forth, over time. And so that's really how I got into quantum physics. I just really developed this thirst for it. And I'm only talking about that incident that happened because it didn't happen until after the incident. Something triggered something or sparked something in me that made me dive into it. And then I was able to see the connection between the science and spirituality. And I realized that the quantum physics is really explaining what's happening on the spiritual realm. In other words,
oh, goody. So we're going to go with Deepak Chopra level quantum garbage. Well, I'm glad someone is going there, other than dozens of other people on the internet.
Quantum physics is the breakdown and understanding of spiritual energy and what's really happening when you're meditating, when you're focusing on things, when you're trying to manifest reality. All those things are really explained through quantum physics.
Yeah. No, they're not. Quantum physics has to deal with the movement of particles at the smallest scale. It is known to be incompatible with general relativity.
Yeah, well, it's you're that observer or the spooky
Spooky action at a distance.
Spooky action at a distance. Your observation of it, it affects things. Things aren't just, you're not just perceiving it. It has, when you put your
You know, if you really studied Einstein, you might have realized he had to admit he was wrong about his initial stance on quantum physics, especially when the quantum physicists were showing actual applications of what they were doing.
finger in the water.
I think most people don't understand quantum physics, but that's okay. Most of us don't have to.
The entire ocean has to register that change of motion and condition. It has to be understood on some level. So
wait, the entire ocean has to register the change of motion and condition? How is the ocean registering anything?
It's gaining information by what's been laid out in front of us, presented before us. Most of that is speculation, because like I was saying.
Oh yes, as a side note, in the Calc 1 course, when we're learning about derivatives beyond the third, when I heard about snap, crackle, and pop, I'm like, those are names that had to be given to us by quantum physicists. And it turns out I was right. Because I think I forget how it goes, so I'm probably going to be slightly off on this, but the first derivative is speed, second is velocity, third is jerk, fourth, fifth, and sixth are snap, crackle, and pop.
Saying before, all of those things, all of that 4% of the universe, they've received Nobel Prizes and all of that for it, but they haven't produced anything that's changing the world or the conditions or making the world a better place. So it still looks like Solomon said, you're chasing after the wind. And when you start questioning these things and going back into meditating,
quantum physics has produced nothing? I'm pretty sure we have developed new technologies as well as new math based on our understanding of quantum mechanics. Not to mention, we have discovered things using our knowledge of quantum mechanics, such as the Higgs boson particle.
Going back, like when I tell people that a lot of this stuff came to me, like you after having that experience and seeing that aviation phenomenon, it made you question and look into things. Well, likewise, having that dream when I was 4 or 5 years old and being reminded that I was someplace before here, and seeing all those geometries and wondering why had I never seen those in school, and looking for them in school. So I started looking in the Encyclopedia Britannica, and that's where you get the Platonic solids. But then you have to start what we are afraid to.
Did you just say we got the Platonic solids from Encyclopedia Britannica? I mean, that's not the worst claim I've heard you say, but let me just clear this up for you. We did not get the Platonic solids from the Encyclopedia Britannica. We really got it from Wikipedia.
To do is question what happened before the Big Bang.
Or maybe Plato, one of those two.
Okay, well, how did this straight line come to be? I started questioning all of those basic things, questioning down to the calculator, questioning every aspect, and questioning, okay, if what they said about God is true, that means I'm an artifact, that he just formed some clay and made me and blew some life into me. And they forgot to mention, or the people that was writing it was unaware of the Brownian effect, that clay is not some dead, unliving material. That clay is alive. It's vibrating and polarizing from positive.
Wait, I'm pretty sure the Brownian motion does not describe the movement of particles in clay, but again, it's been a while since I've had a physics class.
Positive to negative, everything, and it's mating. Everything is mating.
No, Mr. Howard, not everything is mating. I don't know if you're just some kind of pervert or if this is part of your mania, but you need to get off this right now.
Like when I mentioned wave conjugations, I always hear, oh, waves don't conjugate. It's like, no, you don't understand that these things are living and are mating. The sex principle is a big part of everything. That's how the universe reproduces itself. But then questioning things like
how the universe reproduces itself? I don't think we have any idea if the universe reproduces itself. It's possible it does, but we have no way of knowing that.
In a contained universe. Well, this is the biggest thing that happened to me when I was a kid. When I thought I was doing something, I was 13, and I dropped a pebble into the pond and I watch it expand, and I realized everything expanded as a sphere. But if the universe was infinite, then it would just keep expanding out and you'll never see it return. But the moment I started seeing returning waves, and those returning waves were now hitting these expanding waves, I saw the same geometries that I'd seen in those dreams. And I'm like, oh, so the
We can call them shapes, Terry.
universe isn't infinite. It has to be finite. And everything inside the universe has been built from the outside in. It's not the inside building out, it's the outside pushing in these contractive forces.
And because this is Faulty Logic Fridays, it's time to point out that this has been nothing but non sequiturs.
So that gives me a different insight as towards the effects of, or the anomaly of gravity. When you start looking at it from what has been and not based off of that big G has always been God in the scientific world. You have to question that sometimes.
Wait, I thought the big G in the scientific world was gravity.
Makes a lot of sense what you're talking about, how the wave pressure coming in is helping to collapse this reality.
It holds it in place.
Yeah, because
the wave pressure coming in is helping to collapse this reality. I don't think I could have come up with a less meaningless sentence if I tried. And I've written some unimpressive Python code today.
Even if you look at the double slit experiment, when you're not observing the electrons going through the slits in this microscopic box, they act as waves of potential. But once you look, they collapse back into digital matter again. But when they're waves, they're giving you the...
Wait, digital matter? I didn't know matter was comprised of zeros and ones.
The superposition. Potential waves of what? Potentiality. But consciousness can collapse that back in. And in my opinion, what's happening is when a conscious observer is looking at these waves, it's like that force coming back in on the wave and collapsing it into the illusion of solidity.
Yeah, the illusion. There's all of this is an illusion, and to consider all of our collapsing waves, like the weight, the atmosphere, the pressure, the weight of the atmosphere, that's what holds each system together. So it should be the returning magnetic waves are responsible for the things that we call matter holding itself together.
And it was one of those rogue waves that sank the Edmund Fitzgerald.
But if we just go on.
No, this is great. This is phenomenal. This is a great conversation. I think people are going to get a lot out of this, and I'm so glad that we're here doing this in person.
Oh, I'm getting a lot out of this, but not what you think I am.
Man, because this is going to be. I just want to I like giving people credit where credit is due, and I really think you have a magnificent mind. And whether a person went to Stanford, Harvard, or MIT or whatever, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing, because who was the first quantum physicist? And
Max Planck, who got his degree at 21 from a German university.
Where did his degree come from? It didn't exist, right? There's no degree. There's no university. He went...
Again, he had a PhD in physics.
To the University of Life.
No, he went to a German university whose name I've forgotten.
And he got his degree in nature. And then he began to teach that to people. And then eventually they created a university. And then eventually people got a certificate for going there. You know?
Oh, I assure you, Mr. Howard has equations.
But it doesn't, just because you've been reminded and have repeated words and phrases and theories constantly upon itself, no matter how many times you say it, it doesn't make it true. What makes it true, like Jesus said, you will know it by its fruits. What kind of fruits have it produced? Has it just produced a lot of speculation? Then great. Then it's an imaginary thing. But if it's something that is defining your
own songs for the reality
to it, and
I'm glad you just said he's an imaginary thing.
Invention that will have application and improve a particular system. That should be the method. Now, what they've done is they've pedestalized all of the old inventors or theorists and physicists from before. So now it is heretical.
Yes.
Heretical? And no, they haven't. There's no heresy in science. Even Einstein said it would only take one experiment to prove him wrong. Now, what people seem to be getting mixed up with is that math and science work a little differently. In math, for example, if we can prove that something is true and always going to be true, it doesn't matter if we can find some way. I forgot where I was going with that. It's always going to be true, no matter how much we wish it not to be. If something is not always going to be true, or it's never going to be true, we have ways of proving that as well. Because science doesn't really prove things, whereas in both math and computer science, you can prove things absolutely. So that's why Terrence Howard's statement that 1 times 1 equals 2 will never be right in basic arithmetic, because we have multiple ways of knowing it's not correct.
Heretical to even question.
Facts. It became a religion.
It's a religion.
And by the way, if you're enjoying this, please take a minute to subscribe.
It's a religion now, and you get burned at the stake. Even when you come with, I thought that by presenting patents, I thought that inventing new forms of flight, innovating multiple areas, starting the being responsible for half of the AR VR that's out there.
Mr. Howard, we have been over this before. Virtual reality was invented the year before you were born. You have a rejected patent that other people basically cited because they were trying to file similar patents.
That all of these things would be enough. And then having the wave conjugations to predict.
For heaven's sakes, Mr. Howard, conjugation either refers to something in biology, or it refers to sexual reproduction of bacteria, or something you do to verbs in an inflected language. I can conjugate a Latin verb, a Spanish verb, an English verb, an Italian verb, and a German verb because they all have inflections.
Every potential harmonic node, and matter occurs as a result of harmonic nodal interaction. It's circulating around that area. So I thought having these things and having a platform, it would garner people's interest. But like Jesus said, for those who have ears and those who have eyes.
I would like to apologize to any physicists who have a severe headache right now.
Those are the ones to see. And if it took 500 million sperm in order for me to get here and get to that egg, I had to win a race against 500 million. I think getting to the next stage of our.
For heaven's sakes, it's not like that sperm cell had any consciousness. It was just doing what it was designed to do.
Evolution and growth. If A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then everybody isn't going to make it. And so I don't need to beat it.
How does that follow at all? If A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then everybody is not going to make it. Terrence, what logically followed after that statement was then A is equal to C.
Dead horse in trying to encourage people to look and challenge things. The material is out there. The proof is out there. I've given it, sufficiently.
Yes, I've seen your proof, Mr. Howard, and it's all wrong. The Anunnaki sky people did not give us bad math. Invoking conspiracy theories is not how you conduct a math proof. I am so glad you have not said anything about computer science.
If they don't want it, then I'll continue moving forward.
Yeah, we just continue moving forward. That's how we do it. And speaking of challenges, like what are some of the challenges you might have faced even in the early stages, maybe even growing up, in acting? Any challenges that you faced in your
I would love to see his report cards from elementary school.
Your life.
Well, the first challenge is surviving the Black neighborhood, just surviving the disenfranchisement, surviving not having a sense of self. How do you know where you're going when you don't know where you've been, where you've come from? You don't know who you are. Your uncles and your father, they're having to do nefarious things in order to survive and pay for you because we live in a system that's not balanced. How do you maintain your morality in a world that's dark and immoral? How do you avoid the puffy parties? How do you avoid the Epstein ultimate effect where you gain so much power that you lose your sense of self? How do you stay connected to the earth and to your spiritual responsibility? That's been one of the biggest challenges out of everything. It's maintaining that. Right,
maintaining that. Yeah, and I can understand 1,000%. You know, coming from where I came from in the hood growing up, and just looking around and seeing the disarray. And people just not really understanding, like parents, you know, openly beating their kids in the street and people getting shot, people getting stabbed. I've been shot, I've been stabbed, you know, overcoming that and realizing like, wow, there's got to be something better. I feel like I'm just one of the fortunate ones that was able to see beyond the veil and realize like, this isn't for me. And I told my mother, I don't belong here. I knew it. I had that gut wrenching feeling that I didn't belong there. And that was a big challenge. And the only thing that really ignited me to get out of that situation was the fact that one day I took a risk. I made a decision to go door to door asking for donations for my toys to my friends' parents, which I wasn't allowed to do. I wasn't allowed to leave the front yard of the house because it was too dangerous. And I went door to door around the entire block. I squared a block and I came back with like $13 and change. And I knew at that moment I was going to save myself. And I told myself out loud, I'm going to save myself. I realized that if I have a thought and I act on it, I can get a different result and I can change this reality tunnel that I'm in. And so that's exactly what I did. And once I did that, man, I knew for a fact I was going to escape this hell. And I did.
Yeah, it's like the superpositioning model we were talking about before, that fourth person perspective, you know, that observational place. I've always said that, you know.
Fourth person perspective? What?
Now, everyone sees a different horizon based on their height, their vision, and their imagination.
Yeah.
You know, you see what you want to see. It crystallizes in front of you because that's all you're willing to speed up to.
Exactly.
Because it's just a matter of turning up your vibratory response, you know, and then you can catch more inside of those.
Listen, if I could see what I wanted to see, trust me, Mr. Howard, I would not have saw the results of that poll.
Those little waveforms, but we at times have been told, okay, this is what you have to do. You know, you beat Black people into submission.
Right.
So Black people have been beating our children into submission. You know, we are of no value. So we might as well, you can shoot a Black person and get less time in prison in comparison to shooting a white person, you know, under the same.
Okay, I really don't have too much to say here because even through a lot of the word salad here, they're getting at things that are actually real problems. So let's skip ahead because this is not, we're not really doing social commentary on this channel.
I said, you guys keep my share. I'm starting from zero. And I walked out and I became forbidden knowledge, you know, and I just started from zero. You know, it took me from 2013, beginning of 14, all the way to 2017 before I turned on monetization to try to figure out how am I going to really monetize. I had to build it first. And then from there, you know, I continue to grow every single year, but man, but you say, if you're not living in your passion, you're doing something else that has nothing to do with your true mission, and you're in agony. And every single day, I didn't even want to do that work. I didn't want to get involved, and I didn't want to go to the office. I got to the point where they're like, "Are you coming in today?" And I wouldn't come in for like a week at a time. And I realized, man, I'm just burning years. I'm burning time.
Mr. Carson, there is a psychological condition known as burnout. I've had it happen to me when I worked as a journalist. That's when I returned to my true love, computers.
And I'm not making any changes, no appreciable effect on the planet because of what I'm doing there, and I have to make a change.
Do you remember that book?
And I assure you, you're making no appreciable effect on the planet now.
Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson.
Oh, no, I don't know that
one.
Oh,
my God.
Check it out.
You'll love it. But it's a story of these four little creatures, two little mice and two little people. And they live outside of this enigma.
Perhaps I should put the link of like Black computer scientists and mathematicians I found below, because I want people to know it's like there are Black scientists, Black computer scientists, and Black mathematicians who have actually made real contributions.
What do you call it when there's damn, I just had a senior moment.
It's like a cave.
When the mouse.
Let's just beat it up and let everyone know that the word he's looking for is in fact maze.
Runs through this.
Oh, the mouse hole?
Yeah, but what is that called?
Oh, the maze.
The maze. Yeah. The maze. Oh my God, I kept calling you.
Don't worry.
So they live outside of this maze.
Yeah.
And every day, the little mice, they go inside to look for their cheese, and they've got the same routine. They put their little sneakers on and sniffs in the direction, and then scurry runs in the direction that sniffed in. And then there's him and haw, and they have their little human ways of finding cheese, and they like a different type of cheese.
Okay.
You know, they like soft cheeses. But something interesting happens when they find this place called Cheese Station C. And in Cheese Station C, it's all the cheese you could ever want, all the cheese you could ever need. And all of the two little mice, they keep doing the same thing. Every morning they get up and they sniff in the direction to go, and they find Cheese Station C. But the little humans, they move next to Cheese Station C. They live right there next to Cheese Station C, and they never notice that Cheese Station C is running out. Gotcha. And so one day when all the cheese is gone, the little mice, they sniff and they run in direction of the new cheese. But him and haw, they sit there and they start complaining, who moved my cheese? Who moved my cheese? And it's, you find that having cheese doesn't make one happy. It's the search for new cheese. It's that search. You had already accomplished all of these things, but here you're just...
I don't think that's a lesson, Mr. Howard. I think it's about complacency and unwillingness to change. Something people are known to be bad at.
Repeating, and when you're supposed to be growing to the forbidden knowledge aspect of it. So I applaud that. You know, for me, it's been the same thing of, you know, I could be quiet and be a good actor and make millions and millions of dollars, but that's not what I wanted. What I wanted to do was to explore the truth and then share that truth with individuals. And I'm doing that as the best that I can. You know, now I have to take the responsibility off and say, hey, it's there. Now I'll just keep building it.
Right. You keep building, and you're doing a great job. It takes a lot of courage to do what you've done so far.
Well, I can't argue with that one. It does take courage to go onto Joe Rogan and proudly proclaim that 1 × 1 = 2.
And I don't know if people can really understand the level of courage that it takes to step outside of what is considered the norm and is considered to be a great career, to then start talking in an area where you're talking against a lot of what the mainstream considers as real science, right? So you're bringing these new ideas, new concepts. That takes courage because you're going against the grain.
Gee, I wonder why they consider real science, and they consider what you two have to offer as pretty much a grift trying to take advantage of gullible people.
And a lot of people, I don't know if they realize how hard it is for a person to just step out and actually have the strength inside of them to do that.
Well, when you've been given little secrets along the way that point in the direction that says, no, this upturns their cart. Red flags don't come free. You have to use them. And so I knew that they didn't have facts. They just had propaganda. They didn't have any facts behind them, or these theories would no longer be theories. They would be constants and accepted things in there.
So I want you to note that you heard it here first, that the fundamental theorem of algebra and the fundamental theorem of arithmetic, as well as the laws of exponents, all of those are things that Howard does not understand. I want you to know that they are propaganda, not facts that have been determined by mathematicians centuries ago.
And I had the actual proof. I had simple proof down to the malfunctioning of the calculator and the things that they...
How was the calculator malfunctioning? It wasn't. It was doing what it was programmed to do.
Hold as important and reliable. I'm like, no, this is you can't rely on.
It's flawed.
It's flawed. The foundation of your entire world is flawed. And I'm presenting the truth and with proof. And I say it's the truth because
Mr. Howard, the only potential flaw in the calculator that you might have discovered is a well-known problem with floating point arithmetic.
Comes with the proof of it.
No, you bring the receipts.
Yes.
That's what you bring in, the receipts, and that's what matters. Have you seen any connection to your art of acting with the science that you're involved in, or is it completely two separate things?
No, it's everything.
Well, they're both totally imaginary.
Is one action. I'm still looking for, like, they give me these characters, and one of the things that I do, and they always throw a bad guy at me. But I don't believe there are any bad guys, like James Earl Jones told me. He said, let Sydney play all the the politicians and these great people. He said, I want to play the complicated people because I came from a complicated life and a complicated world. So I want to find humanity and peacefulness in resolving someone. So when I get on a series like Empire, and who the character after 2 years was supposed to die,
right?
He was supposed to have,
really?
Yeah, he was supposed to ALS.
Oh wow!
And so he would receive his justice and become a better person by the end of the second season. That's what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And then they're out of nowhere, they want to, save him because they wanted to keep him alive, but he was a zombie. I could not save that person with their storyline. So you have to find a space where you can, I'm trying to become a better person, no matter what the condition the person has been in. So there's a tie.
Listen, I applaud your efforts to become a better person if that is what you are trying to do. But in order to advance any math, you're going to have to go back and learn the basics. You can't just assert that things that we have known for centuries are wrong. Oh, and by the way, you're eventually going to say something about pi that is also wrong.
Towards truth, towards compassion, towards love, because every bad character started off as a beautiful child, and somewhere along the way, some fundamental was missed.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It brings me down to just,
in your case, it was basic arithmetic.
Just understanding it's not really a law or a constant, but I guess it might be considered a constant hypothetically. Love, right? And which is a frequency.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Constants have a specific meaning in physics, computer science, and math. In computer science, they're a variable whose value does not change. In constants, they are things that always have a constant value. And in math, it's just a number.
And if you look at like the movie Star Wars, the Jedi, they use the frequency for the light, and then the Empire uses the same frequency for the dark. So even though you start off as a this great little soul that's just filled with light and
And why do I want to quote REM right now?
And knowledge and want to grow and to be this great person, and then all of a sudden at some point, because of all the things that interact with us, it can then change, and in some way that person's mind decides to use that same light that was in them for darkness. But it's still only one light. In the Bible, in Isaiah, it says, I created the good and I created the evil. Do what I say, the Lord. So God is saying,
if you're going to quote Isaiah 45:7, get it right.
He's creating the good and the evil. So it's this dichotomy of yin and yang, which inside of all of us.
You have a sword or a knife. The knife can be used to cut open a person, or it could be used to open up a watermelon.
Yeah.
It's just it's in the hand of the beholder, in a sense. Yeah. We are what we choose to be, and bad association, again, like Timothy, it spoils the most useful of habits. When you watch death continually, you lose the appreciation of life. When you watch and are associating with people that are not bending to the light and yielding to the light, and they just turn their back to it, then,
Are they wrapped up like a deuce? Another roller in the night?
You end up crystallizing in the wrong direction. But at any given point, you can look inside and reconnect with your greater being, with your greater purpose. At any given point, you can turn around and identify with the divinity that is in you.
Right. Absolutely.
And have the access to everything. People criticize a lot. Well, you didn't get a degree. You didn't learn these things from our schools, and neither did Ramanujan.
Exactly.
Ramanujan said he got it from Shiva. So why are you accepted from him? And he had just equations. Here I have true patterns and full things and defining things that have never been defined before.
Right.
Why?
All right. So the reason no one accepts what you have to say, Terry, is because there are many ways we know you are wrong. I don't know who this other person you're mentioning is, but I'm guessing he's probably some guru that isn't taken seriously by any scientist. But yes, you can go back and find Greek philosophers that we actually do take seriously who contributed to our current understanding of math, like Pythagoras or Plato. But one, as you pointed out, they actually didn't have universities back then. And two, things have to start somewhere. However, the reason you're totally wrong about quantum mechanics is quantum mechanics didn't even become a thing until the late 19th century, early 20th, when we definitely had universities. And yes, there are scientists such as Faraday who made important discoveries but were not formally educated.
Why don't you accept it? And I had to accept that they weren't supposed to accept it. It wasn't meant for.
I don't know who Ramanujan is, but there's a lot of people on this channel who may know who Aaron Ra is, who does have a biology degree now. But for a longest time, he was like one of the world's leading experts in phylogeny, and he did not yet have a college degree. Being an autodidact is possible, but it is rare.
For them,
Right.
but the people that do accept it and understand, within that is the secrets to everlasting life.
Yeah.
The true secrets of being able to manipulate the universe in a good way. And I think the universe gave me these gifts because of my overall nature. At the end of the day, I don't really care about.
It is statements like this that makes me feel guilty for covering Mr. Howard, because these are something I would see as obvious signs of mental illness when my loved ones went through their manic states.
Humanity. I care about the hue of our humanity.
Okay.
I want a legacy to.
The hue of our humanity? What does the color of our humanity have to do with anything? What does that even mean?
Where we're considered like the angels, you know, and animal and plant life to rejoice when they interact with us instead of running in fear. Like my ninth rule for my family is make way for life. And that's the message for our church. The Center for Truth, Love, and Consciousness, TCO-TLC, is make way.
You know, sometimes I wish I had a tax write-off.
For life.
Gotcha. Beautiful. That's beautiful, man. And speaking of some of the rules that you have, let's talk about teleology. You've introduced the idea of teleology. You know, it's a different approach.
All right. I want everyone who is familiar with what teleology is to get the laughter out of your system now, because you'll need at least a chance to catch your breath, because he's about to say some things that are even more hilarious. All right, is everyone good now? Let's continue.
On how you see the universe's fundamental building blocks. So let's get into that.
Well, see, the funny thing is that was the writer for the Rolling Stones.
They came up with that term?
He said teleology, and I think he said it as a slight. You know, because that entire article was
the writer for the Rolling Stones. Terry, the Rolling Stones is a band from the 60s. I think you meant Rolling Stone, the magazine.
Seriously, a hit job.
Wow.
But I told him about the Tetractarian wave conjugation.
Okay.
That's what it always was, but they began calling it teleology.
Oh, okay.
This is also incorrect because he's the one who named it teleology.
Gotcha.
I think now that Professor Dave has called him out on that being a hugely narcissistic thing to do, he's trying to roll it back.
To
like a little jab.
As a jab. But the fact that they're talking about it and had to talk about it actually added to what we're doing, because these are, what I did is I took the flower of life. So if we go to my book, tcotlc.com, this is kind of the journey of how these wave conjugation.
Okay, I just want to point out that this book does, in fact, like all great works of math and science, start out with a story about how Terrence Howard was conceived. We all know that when Plato wrote his books, that he felt a need to tell us how Plato was conceived. So Mr. Howard is just following in that tradition.
Came about.
Okay.
I was told that our fundamentals came from the Platonic solids. And my question had always...
Our fundamentals of what came from the Platonic solids? This book also says that every university course starts with the Platonic solids, and it just doesn't. When I first learned Python, I did not have to go over the tetrahedron, the octahedron, the hexahedron, also known as a cube, the icosahedron, and the dodecahedron, or the D12. Why? Because none of those things were relevant.
Always been, because I always wanted to get to the root of things. Like I loved etymology. I wanted to get to the root of the word and understand what was intended. So I wanted to know where the fundamentals came from. And they said that the fundamentals were the tetrahedron, the octahedron,
The fundamentals of what?
the hexahedron.
Because I guarantee you the fundamental thing about biology is the theory of evolution.
The icosahedron and the dodecahedron.
Right.
And I was like, okay, where did these come from? Well, they come from the idea of a straight line and a flat plane and all having regular sides, but
They come from playing around with right triangles. Why don't you actually read what Plato said about them? You can find translations for free online.
I was like, so where did the straight line come from?
Yeah.
Here I am asking,
Right.
How did God?
Well, if I had my guess, it's either your lack of medication or you're having help from certain pharmaceutical medications.
God come to be?
Right.
Where did, because
Sorry, recreational pharmaceutical medications.
God is the straight line. Because what do they say? We want to straighten something out.
Yeah.
If there's any situation that's wiggly, let's put a ruler on it. Let's straighten this out. Let's get it all squared away. So that's
God is a straight line? What? Well, we then know that the doctor can't be God because he deals with wibbly wobbly timey wimey.
their kind of God. I was like,
Yeah.
let me look at this. And since Newton said every action has an equal and opposite reaction, that's never been argued. Therefore, the greater the action, that means the greater the reaction. The greater the
Oh, for heaven's sakes, this isn't even right either. Mr. Howard, learn some basic physics. When all forces are in equilibrium, objects don't move.
the reaction, the greater the resistance. The greater the resistance, the greater the curvature. And since the creator demands
And if P equals NP, Mr. Howard is still wrong.
equanimity, everything has an equal and opposite reaction. Therefore, every reaction is going to be curved.
Right.
And based on the angular momentum,
Every action is going to be curved? Can you come up with a sentence that actually means anything?
that's created from the intersection. So I was like, so where did they get these straight lines from? If God couldn't make straight lines,
Right.
My guess is a ruler.
oh, they invented them. So where did they invent them from? I was like, well, I went to the oldest and earliest information I could find. And this is what really got me, because it took me back to those dreams that I used to have. Here, I'm pulling something up. Now, here's the flower of life.
Okay.
Yep. As the age of it is almost unknown, but each and every, it's 64 overlapping circles, but there are no straight lines there. But at a time when the thought was that there were straight lines.
I am so glad you decided to pull up a random YouTube video as proof of anything.
Lines, or the world was flat. Guess what they did? They averaged the spaces where the circles overlap.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh, that's an average. That's an approximation. That's not real.
Right.
How is that an average of anything? Do you know what an average is?
The Pythagorean theorem coming from the cube. And I was like, well, maybe.
Wait, what? If I were better versed in math history, I would probably be able to pick apart that statement, but I'm pretty sure the Pythagorean theorem does not come from the cube.
They didn't open the flower properly. So what I did was the little Jiminy Cricket that's been leading me along the way, it said, why don't you lay out the flower of life and open it based upon the relative fact.
Wait, the little Jiminy Cricket that's been leading you along the way? Is that an admission of a hallucination?
Let me go to page 134 in the book. That was just on 64.
Okay.
And said, why don't you open it based upon the actual actual pieces that make up the flower?
Right.
And mind you, I was still trying to figure out what were those shapes that were being presented to me when I was 4 and 5 years old.
Right.
I hadn't seen them yet, even after in researching this stuff. And then this is when it all came into being.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, oh, this is tight. Wow, that's good. Let me do that again. Let's go right. Sorry. That's tight. Okay. So I was like, what happens if I take 4 of the individual pieces that make up the flower? And that's 4 of the triangular pieces
Yes.
that makes up the flower. So I was like, If I take 4 of these triangular pieces and put them together based on universal ratios, then it gave me this negative space where 4 bubbles met.
Right.
And based on what Walter Russell had talked about in the nature of how electricity moves, it's always seeking a higher pressure condition.
Yeah.
So this area in here, let's see if this will open up, get a little bigger for me. This area right here is where electricity is going to be spinning northeasterly.
Okay.
Electricity is going to be spinning northeasterly. Electricity describes the flow of electrons. It doesn't spin, and northeast is a cardinal direction. I think there are at least 5 things wrong with that sentence, and you didn't even realize it.
Spinning to the right. Now, as the electricity, as each wave hits here, now it's being pushed by other waveforms, and so it gets pushed out to these vortices at the tip, and now
I believe you meant vertices.
it's no longer able to spin northeast, and so it starts, because it has low density, it has nothing to push against, so it starts spinning southwesternly.
Gotcha.
And now this is where it becomes magnetism. Well,
It becomes magnetism? What?
I found it interesting, but they gave me the patents for this thing, and I called it the tetrahedron.
Yes, because you can patent shapes.
Yeah.
You know, but it turned out to be the geometry of hydrogen, and I'll explain that. I will qualify.
No, it didn't turn out to be the geometry of hydrogen.
That as we go along. Then I was like, well, what happens when 8 bubbles meet? Now, what was interesting, this is the negative space where 8 bubbles are meeting.
What happens if you make that out of clay and spin it on Hanukkah?
And you have the 8 contractive sides for the Huntian. 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's 5, 6, 7, 8 if you were to turn it all the way around. But it only had 6 magnetic poles. So that meant that it had a greater electrical potential than a magnetic.
6 magnetic poles? Pretty sure magnets only have 2 poles max.
Magnetic or repulsive potential. And I was like, wow, that sounds like a neutron.
Yes.
That sounds like
What? No, neutrons just have 0 charge. They are electrically neutral.
the work of a neutron. But what was interesting, I was like, but how does it have in nature? Everything is always balanced. I was like, so this having a greater electrical potential than a repulsive potential, magnetic potential, I was like, that wouldn't exist inside of the universe unless this right here, each time these tetraons, these 4 tetraons, as they unite around or combine or interact, you'll see that they are taking up 1, 2, you have 1 and 2 of the electric potentials taken up. And they gave me again, oops, God forgive me. I will have me a engineer one of these days with me. This is like some, but you still have 6 bubbles meeting. And they
Can't imagine why engineers who actually know, I don't know, physics will have nothing to do with you.
gave me the patents to that, but you still have 6 unaccounted for. So I was like 6 electrical poles unaccounted for. So I was like, what happens when 6 bubbles meet? And here with 12 bubbles meeting. And now you still have 4 unaccounted electrical poles, and it's a stable system. And I call this an Aubrian. And I'll show you in the video that I just showed you the supersymmetry of it. But then I was like,
but please keep in mind that if you want to build any further proton structures, you must construct additional pylons. StarCraft references, gotta love them.
What happens when you put 24 bubbles together? And again, all of these, the patents were granted, but you'll notice this entire thing is literally the pressure condition that's generated.
Oh, look, he's generated the head of a Skyrim mace.
From 8 of the tetraons pushing on a given point. Pushing on this one center right here. So this doesn't really exist. This only exists as a result of the condition of these tetraons or these atoms in relation to each other. But as a result of this, the entire universe ends up making sense because this pressure condition, you know, the moment you remove the pressure condition, now it goes back to being separate tetraons. So I was like, it made sense with the massless particles, those ideas. But then when I put them all together,
this is incredible because
I don't think massless particles exist. There are particles like the electron that have close to zero mass, but they are not massless.
When you look at this basic science of accretion, right? If you take matter, if you take flour or small amounts of rocks and take them into orbit around Earth and then release them, they're going to naturally attract, and the pressure conditions are going to create an.
No, they won't. For heaven's sakes, what is going to happen is that they will probably start spinning around the Earth or fall back to Earth under the influence of the greater gravity.
An accretion disk, and that accretion disk is going to begin to spin on its axis, which is the formation of planets.
And that's all those waveforms returning back.
But this also contradicts something Terrence said earlier, where he said that planets are formed the same way we defecate. Yes, he did say that.
Back onto each other,
Yeah.
returning back to each other. So it's like they're looking from the inside out and wanting something to come from in here.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to get to these videos, 5 different
From your lower intestine? Well, Mr. Howard, I do suspect we are hearing a lot of something that's coming from your colon.
pressure conditions that replace the platonic solids.
Yeah.
You have a grand unified.
No, but stars do, and apparently the red storm on Jupiter, purple rounds with orange, is going to become a planet someday.
Supersymmetry that don't exist. Here's where 4 bubbles meet,
Venus
meeting
says
where
hi,
8
by the
bubbles
way.
meeting where 6 bubbles meeting where the 12 is meeting.
Right.
I put 5 of where the 12 coming together, they make natural star forms. I put 10 of them and they create these natural icosahedrons when you put 2 of them on top of each other. I was like, this is the building blocks of the universe.
It's the building blocks of the universe. You're talking about the fractal matrix at this.
That is neither a fractal nor a matrix.
Central of its core, unfolding this flower of life into multiple dimensions instead of a flat plane, and showing how you can build anything. Build a planet, a sun.
There's a video where we rebuild the planet Saturn, which I found very fascinating.
Very similar to the Mandelbrot set and fractal mathematics, but you're taking this.
If it's similar to the Mandelbrot set, which, by the way, according to Jonathan Colton, is a badass effing fractal, then what is the equation for it? Because there is an equation that governs the Mandelbrot set.
This flower of life, which I personally believe, my hypothesis on the flower of life is that's the face of God.
Bingo.
Space of God. Yeah. You want to see creation. You want to see the divine energy, where it's coming from. You want to see everything that exists in a known and unknown universe. Well, there it goes. Watch
this. This is us taking a basic physics simulator, the same simulator that they use at Princeton, at Oxford, that the students use at Harvard, and we put in a few massless particles.
All right, let's actually debunk this one again, because he absolutely did not use a simulator software. And yes, I would believe that students at Harvard and MIT would use Blender for certain things, especially if they're studying computer graphics and computer animation, but it is not simulation software. Blender is a very powerful 3D animation program. It's something I've used because it also has one of the best open source video editors around. But the one thing it isn't is for simulating things.
We didn't put any animation into it, nothing like that, and just ran the...
You didn't put any animation into the thing you did in an animation program. How do we know you're lying? Could it be that the only reason to use Blender other than video editing is in fact computer animation?
The program with lynchpins in their position. And just so the audience understand, lynchpin is literally those 6 sides that come off of the tetrahedron. Each one of those ends up becoming a pentagonal shape based upon...
So you're talking about the hexagonal shape at Saturn's North Pole, and you said pentagonal. Why?
When it expands into a Mirrodal shape, or its feminine component, magnetism, or
its feminine component, magnetism? Shapes are masculine and magnetism is feminine? What?
contractive side or the electric side is the tetryon, but the middle ground between it is the linchpin. And so when we put those linchpins in rotation, this is what came up. So what we basically did is that all of these individual.
There is a Python script he uses to do this, where he uses a force that isn't labeled, but seems to be a constant very similar to gravity. So I just wanted everyone to know that.
Points, we put 4 linchpins into rotation with each other.
Gotcha. Now your massless particles, would that be the Higgs boson?
Those were just the massless particles. We put not massless particles. We put
the Higgs boson is not a massless particle.
Like 300,000 mass, particles inside it. I wasn't supposed to say massless. And these particles, just to give it.
Yes, I don't think Mr. Howard should be assuming the gender of particles and any of the 4 fundamental forces.
Rotation, and in the center of it, we gave it a harmonic, just an on and off harmonic, and allowing it to play itself out without us doing anything but hitting play and letting it go through a few rotations of it.
Yeah.
This is what it ends up generating. Let me go up a little further. There. Should start moving now.
Yeah.
But when we edit, you'll be able to play the whole thing through inside of there. Yeah. But it ultimately rebuilt the planet Saturn with its rings and the hexagon that's found at the top. And
so the animation you made to create the planet Saturn creates the planet Saturn. What an amazing discovery. Oh my gosh, I bet that Python program I wrote to create a dictionary created a dictionary.
This is without animation.
Yeah.
This is without any fudgery or pushing.
Right.
And this is without gravity, without dark matter, without dark energy, just using linchpins and the vortices.
Except for the Python script does include a force with a value that's pretty much around what gravity would be doing there.
In association, we were able to rebuild this planet the same way that I said we would do in that interview where you first, showed love to me when everyone.
Didn't you know Saturn needed to be rebuilt?
And else was like, he's crazy.
Right.
You understood that I was talking about a sim.
I can't imagine why people were saying you were crazy. But no, Mr. Howard, I personally think you have a mental illness. I don't think saying you're crazy is that helpful. Now, I could be wrong, and it could just be that this is just some brilliant character piece where you're trying to show us that you really are a brilliant actor. I hope that's the case.
Simulation and not building the planet Saturn, but with the right vortices and technology, we now have the ability to rebuild a planet based on these wave conjugations.
Right.
This is what it's able to do, and it's repeatable. It's something that we put the entire description at the bottom of it of how this actually works, what it, but
it's incredible that it even creates the hexagonal shape at the top of Saturn.
At the top,
which has been a big question mark
of how that came to be.
Right. But it's through the natural formation, through this process of.
This isn't as much of a mystery as you might think. The fact that I don't know how it got there doesn't mean other people don't.
Of the opening of this flower of life, the energy pattern that exists throughout the known universe, and involved in the accretion process of creating the planet, and then you get this shape, this formation.
If you look at this, I'll read this off, just so the audience will understand it. It says the following models are gravity-free physics simulations and are not animations nor CGI graphics in the standard.
It literally is an animation created by a computer, which makes it by definition computer-generated imagery. Saying "nuh-uh" isn't going to change that, Terry.
Sense as there are no keyframe animations present. All of the forces being used are externally applied vortices, vortexes only, and limited use of central or offset magnetic fields. There are no other internal attraction forces present in the simulation, meaning there are no gravity in there. They are using emulated particles of specified masses in conjunction with specific externally applied forces, harmonic resonances, and emulated magnetic fields only. Everything that came from here came from just how nature would react
do it.
to these vortices
Right.
in relation. And this is without creating 96% imaginary material
Right.
for the universe.
Yeah.
I mean,
Dark matter is not imaginary.
based on the scientific method, this should be the proper walk and should be considered.
Mhm.
Dark matter just doesn't interact with light. That's all it means. Physicists have kind of a strange sense of humor, and they were being a little bit whimsical when they named the forces dark energy and they named the matter we can't see dark matter. It's not that mysterious like you're trying to claim it is.
It should be being tested. I have it on my front page of my book with all of the things how we built the simulator or the simulation. But it was all based on lynchpin, which is all still based.
No, I'm pretty sure the front page of your book is a story about how you were conceived. I've read it.
On that tetrian.
Right.
And to have this prediction ability to rebuild a planet
in
itself. And they've never been able to do this without adding imaginary stuff. This is nothing but true physics tapped into it.
You're talking about tapping into the real God power. Now, that's what you're talking about doing, tapping into the God power. You're talking about right now, we're a type 0 civilization. You skipped over type 1 and went straight to type 2 civilization.
What? I am not sure how making a terrible animation where you're trying to basically get things to form into Saturn skips over civilization type 1 on the Kardashev scale. And it is the Kardashev scale to all Billy Carson fans.
You know, on the scale that they have for civilizations that could exist in the universe. And this is more like going into type 2. So you've really jumped past type 1.
We can manipulate the environment. So that means transmutation. If you can do this to an entire planet, you can do this to any element, and every element has a prime resonant frequency by which it bonds or breaks its bonds. Those prime resonant frequencies are easily...
Elements do not form molecules based on frequencies. I guess chemistry is another subject you failed.
Discovered, you know, through resonance. You can through their light, the light forms. You can easily manipulate anything, but that becomes a threat because they've built their entire world off of inefficiency.
Yes. Everything is built off inefficiency. They monetize inefficiency. They monetize corrupt systems that don't function properly because.
Speaking of which, have you ever taken a look at Billy Carson's web store? Not that I'm suggesting anything.
If you have a system that doesn't function properly, at some point the system is going to break down completely, even though it wasn't working properly to begin with, and that creates the ability for them to generate another ineffective system. And we're living in a world full of ineffective systems where we're being monetized on insufficient systems that don't really provide what they're supposed to provide.
Billy Carson, let me help you out here. The word you're looking for is unregulated capitalism.
They're not giving us the maximum capacity of efficiency that we should be getting.
No, they profit and monetize the expectation of loss, the expectation of falling and drowning. They're like, we're going to save you at this point. We're going to save you at this point. But they have, and you put money into those bonds of saving, and you never get saved. They just put it off. They put off the salvation. They put off your ability for liberty. You know, when you'll be self-sufficient, they want you still at the nipple. And when you have the fundamentals, when you have the truth about you, you don't need any of that. What we're able to do, I'm going to go to a screen again, like with lynchpins. One of the beautiful aspects is when 4 of them come together, you'll see what Tesla was talking about 3, 6, and 9. You'll see 1, 2, and then 3. 3 of the shafts bond. Then the next one will be, you'll see 6 bond, and they're about to make a magnetic bond. And when
I have no idea what he's talking about.
I say magnetism or magnetic, I'm saying they're about to expand out. As you can see, it's expanding from the center. And now you'll see 9 come in. And when Tesla said, if mankind understood the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, he'll have the keys to the secrets of the universe. You know, this doesn't happen by accident. And it repeats that same tetrahedral form when 4 of them come together. And then 8 of them will come to, or 4 of these will come together and still repeat the same pattern. That fractal pattern. And what's really beautiful and ties everything together, you'll see that all of them come around the tetrahedron.
This is what sold me. This is what made me say, man, this guy figured out something that's so incredible, so dynamic. This is what should be on the mainstream news every night instead of the garbage that they've been feeding us. This is going to force science to rewrite.
Oh, if you two were on the mainstream news every night, it would be comedy gold.
This is the fractal.
Yes.
This is for bonding. You know, this is a magnetic bond. Let me show you how electricity behaves. Now, instead of, and you've seen this, but for the audience, instead of 4, now electricity is a higher density, always has a higher density, and it's always seeking a higher pressure condition. So instead of these bonding at the edge.
The weird thing is, electricity does have a measure of pressure associated with it, and it's called the volt.
Edges, they are collapsing the dodecahedron in the center and generating energy. So it's at greater density, but smaller. It's a smaller space.
Collapsing the dodecahedron? Why do you hate 12-sided dice, Terry?
But this is why electricity has so much power, because now that entire center that was here before, you can see how it has been ejected and collapsed, but this still makes the form of a tetrahedron. And these will keep bonding and making other structures, predictable structures.
And this now at 5, does it have electromagnetic force?
It's all electric. It's more electrically expansive.
And then when Terry's done with this, he's going to go try to fit the square peg into the round hole. I'm sorry, Mr. Howard, but this looks like a children's toy.
Gotcha.
You know, so, and they'll keep bonding with other 5s and other 5s. And on the fringes, the 4s will balance themselves. But it's basically rebuilding the periodic table, atom for atom. And when we place these in the solar apex.
How is it rebuilding the periodic table atom for atom? That doesn't even make any sense.
It predicted entire new relationships between stars and constellations, but it also predicts where every star will.
Relationships between stars and constellations? Constellations are just pareidolia. We see the shapes in the sky. They wouldn't be the same shapes viewed from another world.
Occur on the galactic plane, on the celestial plane, and the ecliptic plane. And if you look at the colors going across the edges of these struts, those represent the individual atoms.
And if we study the work of Harry Seldon, we can predict how people in mass are going to react. That is just as valid as anything you said, Terry, and it's better science fiction.
That make up the periodic table with carbon or hydrogen, carbon, and silicon and cobalt being on those center places, and then on the far edges of those, you'll have on the red side you have your lithium, beryllium, boron, and it just expands into the next octave, I mean, it's a concise story that's predictable and proven. Like we were able to throw it into Chat GPT because now they're calling this the Howard comma.
Who is calling it the Howard comma? And did you just assume ChatGPT gave you the right answer? For heaven's sakes. Learn the limitations of AI software. ChatGPT is useful, but ChatGPT and other large language models are often wrong because they're not designed to give you the right answer. They're designed to give you an answer that sounds like a human. Guess what? Humans are often wrong too.
Like the Pythagorean comma. The Pythagorean comma is that portion of the periodic table. And if you watched on that Joe Rogan thing with Eric.
Okay, I have to look something up here unless someone in chat can tell me, but I don't think the Pythagorean comma is a thing. Give me a few seconds because I could very well be wrong. In the meantime, I'm going to give you all a chance to laugh a bit more at Terry and catch your breath in case you nearly passed out, laughing at what he's saying. All right, Pythagorean comma. Oh, okay, apparently it is a thing. I was wrong. Good to know.
Einstein, you'll see, we were talking about the Pythagorean comma 109.47. Eric was saying that was a mistake, that I wasn't aware of. And I was like, no, you don't build 50 patents off of it with it being something.
If you really had studied engineering, you would know why this statement is stupid. Engineers often don't care if something is exact. As long as it's close enough for all practical purposes, they're good.
You're unaware of. It was like, no, but it actually is an error correction code because it allows, instead of them having the Platonic.
If you're going to use phrases from different fields of science and technology learn what they mean. This is not an error correction code. Usually an error correction code is just a bit that is turned on or off to see if the data from certain forms of memory or sent over some networking medium is correct.
Solids, and what they love to do is divide the universe or the earth into cubicles, into cubes, and now make prediction based upon where these cubes are overlapping. Whereas this is no
Who is doing this?
longer based on the cube. This is actually based on those four corners that we were talking about. These four corners right here.
This is incredible. I mean,
this is the four corners that existed that the Bible was
Does anyone else have an overwhelming desire to play with Tinker Toys after watching this?
talking about. The center of the earth. In order for this to exist, there's a sphere in here, a sphere in here, a sphere in here, and a sphere in here. And these four spheres interacting are responsible for all effects of nature. And how they respond when other things bond with them. All of these things. And this is how we developed the lynchpin. It was like, okay, well, they're not listening to it for its predictive value. So it was like, well, let's build it out and put props into those individual areas, and we'll invent tangential flight.
Which I saw the tangential flight from you when we had our live, months ago. But can you pull that video up? Because
and if you take the first derivative of tangential flight, you can solve the 3n + 1 problem.
Yes.
That blew my mind.
Yes.
Because then I saw an application of the science. So it's one thing to have ideas, concepts, theories, but once you can see it being applied, it changes your concept and understanding of it completely.
Let's get it right here. Well, that's some of the patterns. I'm going to just pop it up here. We'll see a four bond of their use. Here's four of them coming together. And out of
Is this also not a computer animation, Terry?
the vortices, we've attached now arms. But the four of these will now come together and lift this 50-pound barrel. And then five of them will come together and pick up the five collected barrels because of their collected thrust.
This would be more impressive if it obviously wasn't a computer animation.
This is a whole new form of flight.
Entirely new form of flight.
It's an entirely not new form of flight. It's a form of flight that we've known about for centuries.
Tangential flight, the ability to fly around your own center of mass, something they've never been able to accomplish, which is 6 prime.
And Mr. Howard didn't accomplish it either, because what he has here is multi-directional flight, and it required software engineers to get his shapes to work well with that.
Props, but this was low-hanging fruit from the lynchpin. This was, I wasn't trying to build flight vehicles. I was just trying.
Of course you weren't, because you held a contest to get people to build your drone.
To prove, I was like, if this is the fractal, I said we should be able to put props.
This is learn what a fractal is. I mean, Terrence Howard is not the only one that does this, but there are no fractals here.
In those pentagonal areas, and it should have tangential flight. And the drone community hated me. They were like, how dare you hit us with something like this? And even though I made a gift for $25,000.
I suspect the drone community, like the rest of us, thinks you're an uneducated person who doesn't know what you're talking about. But because you're a Hollywood actor, you have a lot of money and a lot more power than most people, so you could get this drone made. From what I understand, you also did not pay the people who made the drone for you.
As a reward for anybody that was able to build the flight simulator with this. There were people that are saying it's not possible to accomplish that, and within 2 weeks we had it done. By putting it out into the universe. And now these five, so this is the end of cranes, or this will be able to greatly assist in how we do construction and lifting and bringing things home. And they're all autonomous.
This starts making you even ask questions like, could this technology have existed in the ancient past?
It had to.
Potentially.
Could it? And it had to. Well, no, we didn't need this technology to build the pyramids, Mr. Carson. We had all the technology we needed to pile rocks on top of each other to make big piles of rocks.
helped to build some of these megalithic structures.
It had to.
Yeah, because you can lift an incredible amount of weight with this technology.
Any weight that you want.
Yeah.
And then you cut to, so those are some of the innovations that we've made in flight, but then you cut to what we've done in our propulsion systems. So this is a system in method.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Propellers push air. There is no way this is going to operate outside of the atmosphere.
For projectile propulsion. Now, what's interesting, instead of using any type of chemical propellant, what we've been able to do based on the geometry that we have is, you'll read it in the background. It's conventionally projectile weapons are powered by chemical potential energy that is converted into kinetic energy. For example, a conventional firearm round includes gunpowder, smokeless powder, or some other propellant that is ignited by a primer, which causes the propellant to deflagrate. Well, gases from
Deflagrate? I don't even know what word you were trying to say.
The burning propellant becomes pressurized and expands.
Yes, a neutrino gun, which I got confused with neutron gun, which actually is a thing, which was used in the atomic bomb, if I recall correctly.
And which push a projectile, such as a bullet or a slug, out of a firing chamber and through a bore of a gun barrel. While chemical-based projectile weapons have been the standard for hundreds of years, the small amount of propellant that can be practically placed in the small volume of the firing chamber limits the propulsive force that can be generated, and therefore limits the speed at which the projectile can be fired and the distance that the projectile can be shot. Well, the summary of this disclosure, and I'll just read this first paragraph. The present disclosure describes systems and methods for projectile propulsion, where the propulsive force is applied by an electrically overloaded capacitor, which causes a portion of the capacitor to explode and generate an explosive propulsive force to propel a projectile with substantially more force and at a substantially higher speed than is achievable by conventional powder-based rounds. So we're basically able to take water and...
Is he trying to say he's invented the railgun without saying he's invented the railgun, and by using something that wouldn't work?
Having it in a small chamber, and basically like if you were to think of an ice chest, if you were keeping ice, and you apply an electrical current, you can apply 1,000 volts through the same aperture that you can 1,000,000 volts.
Right.
And now with our geometry, that now is able to sustain that force. And since the water wants to evaporate at 1,700 times its normal volume, and it's unable to do that, now that becomes Q. And so it immediately skips a gas state.
Wait, what?
That it typically would go to, and it goes to a plasma state. And in that, it converts the gas state into a discharge, and it's basically lightning out of the barrel.
So he's saying he created a plasma bolter. Plasma thrower. Okay.
So depending upon how much electricity you run in through.
So are you going to threaten us all with your ray gun if we don't accept that 1 × 1 = 2?
1 thimble of water, you can send something into space, or you can...
Hollyhock, I assure you that you are not the only one who doesn't know what Mr. Howard is saying. Mr. Howard doesn't know what Mr. Howard is saying.
And send it outside of the solar system. It's able to launch, and that's the goal, was for the lynchpins to be launched into space.
So you think you've developed a system where you turn water into plasma and thus send it out the back of a rocket, which, first of all, if I understand how plasma works, you're not going to turn water into plasma. Because as far as I understand it, you cannot actually do chemistry with plasmas because you don't have electrons. Now, I could be wrong about this. I'm not a chemist. This is just off the cuff.
This would be something like riding a percussion wave. So is it something like you send the charge in and you create this expansion through this plasma, then you do it over and over again and it rides this?
Yeah, you put it on a sustained thing. But if you think about, I'll give one secret away. If you think,
what both of you need to learn, Billy Carson and Terrence Howard, is to admit you don't know something. There is no shame in that. Not Neither one of you has had any idea what you're talking about throughout this, and it's obvious to anyone who has had even the smallest amount of education in any of the areas you're talking about. Hollyhock water is actually the most common molecule in the universe.
Think about Victor Schauberg's example of the fluidity of how water is supposed to move. Now you're able to get an internal interaction that's sustainable, and then you provide a way out. So we're able to, it's basically lightning out of the barrel. It's ray guns, you know, and then we patented it as a gun. But not because we were trying to make guns. We wanted to prevent anyone else from being able to make it as a weapon. But there's nothing that can stop.
A patent does not prevent other people from making it eventually. Patents just grant the inventor exclusive rights to produce an item for the first 17 years. And yes, if you patent a gun that worked, which this just wouldn't, it will be made by people who want to use it as a weapon.
Stop this.
No, the applications are almost endless. Even running a combustion engine
off of this.
You
know, so
you can push the cylinders. You know, I mean,
oh my, Billy Carson, you just said an incredibly stupid thing. By the way, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. You cannot run an internal combustion engine on plasma. You need to have something that can burn, which means it has to be either solid, liquid, or gas.
I mean, this is crazy.
So we're there with so many different innovations that has affected so many different fields. And we have the proof, and it makes geometric sense. You know, the universe gave us the ability to recognize the genetic coincidence of symmetry, so we would know that something is healthy, so that we know that it's safe, you know. And we've lost that recognition that, okay, you know, the eye should be around the same place, the nose should be in the right place, therefore that means that their organs are in the right place and it'll be healthy. Well, if we have the genetic or the symmetrical similarities and the harmony associated with this that registers in our eyes, it makes sense putting it together. Now we've innovated multiple fields with it. It should be explored. But when I went to the Black universities, because I was questioning 1 times 1, I went to Morgan State and did an entire presentation. No one from the engineering department showed up. From the physics, from the chemical, from all that. We had to bus in students from outside to be there. And I shared these things then. But that was 5 years ago.
I can't imagine why engineers and people with an actual education in these things don't take you seriously, Mr. Howard. There are plenty of things I said where I know I shouldn't be taken seriously, especially when it comes to chemistry. Now, I welcome people to correct me, which you need to learn to do.
None of the Black universities. And so I'm like, okay. So now,
perhaps because the Black universities want to actually enlighten their students and not condemn them to a worse position than they were in before they came there.
Because all of this stuff is patented, I don't have to share it with those universities that were unwilling. But what does that do to Black people?
It just holds us back even further. I mean, the opportunity was there. You know, sometimes we can't see the opportunity when it's standing directly in front of our face because we've been so...
You know, college-age students would also be enticed by free pizza.
Just systematically put into this mindset or this mental prison. And we want to follow the system exactly as it's been laid out for us. We've been institutionalized in that way from birth all the way through adulthood. So now here you come with the keys to the universe, and they're blind to it. It doesn't even exist in their eyesight. They can't even see it, even though you put it right in front of them.
And that's the most heartbreaking aspect of it. If I wanted to explore some of the magnetic field, And that's with the opposite of the lynchpin. This is me expanding the lynchpin out, or the tetrahedron, to its fullest place, and it become mirrored all shapes. But this is the magnetic field. This is predicting every particular waveform. Inside of this is a water hammer. It's a transmitter. It's a receiver. It's a
fractal of DNA almost to me. Incredible. Yeah.
We call it transcendental lighting. So what are we doing now?
Right.
Why are
A fractal will look similar no matter what scale you zoom into. Learn what a fractal is.
we still in this hidden space? I'm going to close this up now.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't.
I know you had touched on the error correcting codes, and they were talking about the Terry comma, which is kind of like a quantum error correcting code, right? So let's talk a little bit about the error correcting codes. For those people who don't know, I wrote a book called Fractal Holographic Universe, and in that book I use some of the science, or reference some of the science from Professor James Gates Jr., who really is a master in supersymmetry and theoretical physics, and he did some.
So I'm guessing he's not that.
Work on error correcting codes.
Or if he is that, Billy Carson didn't understand anything he read.
Actually discovered these things called Adinkra codes.
Yeah.
Right. And these Adinkra codes, and you take these patterns, you put them into a three-dimensional space. There's this mathematics encoded into them, and these mathematics are called error correcting codes. What he discovered, though, these are the same codes that are running the universe, but also on the smaller scale, they're the same exact error correcting codes that run search engines and web browsers.
No, they are not. Oh my God. Web browsers typically don't use error correcting codes. Now, networking cards may use error correcting codes, memory chips may use error correcting codes, and there may be things like hash signatures, which are not error correcting codes, but what they are there to do is to make sure the data transmitted correctly. How could you possibly say something so stupid, Mr. Carson?
So the universe as a whole is running on the same exact coding that we're using to run search engines and web browsers.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. The universe is so old it's written in COBOL. Everyone knows that. Will you please learn something?
Just on our computers and phones.
Well, they're trying to, because one of the things Alan Watts said, the thing that takes us so long to gain an education is we look at the world.
Is it because you assume you're right when everyone who has an education is telling you you need to go back and study basic math, Mr. Howard? Could it be that?
And we take it all in as one big thing, one big picture. But when you're learning about the world, it's all laid out in these lines, and you've got to read each line on each page, and it takes so long for us to understand. We can't just go to the end of a book and pick it up and have the picture or see a overall picture of it. We have to go through all of these millions and millions of miles of lines of information, because they've laid it out linearly and are no longer doing it.
Lines of information? You know, information can have multiple meanings. But I think what you were trying to say is bits of information, which would make sense with the computer analogy.
Based on how the universe does a whole grand picture, you're thrown right into the water and you become hyper aware of everything around you. That's how the universe is supposed to behave with it. So they'll have different patterns for, okay, we'll do it as a dodecahedron, and we'll have these, and they'll act like Feynman diagrams, and we'll try these out, and then we'll try the tetrahedrons together, but they'll only give us so much. And when I was studying civil engineering, I remember there was an error.
Civil engineering? That's a new claim.
Correcting code for every 10 feet of rope that we had, or of measuring tape. We had to account for 1 inch of sag. And then we had to take into account the wind. And if
there was an error correcting code, do you mean a regulation or something like that?
there were any weather conditions on it, but these error correcting codes would kind of give us an approximation, but it still never gave us what the lynchpin and these wave conjugations are able to bring in.
Perfection. And so the point I was trying to get to was that with the quantum error correcting code, which is what I love the name, the Howard comma, it's a good name. I mean,
I'm just hoping that I'm doing the research.
So it's another thing he named after himself, not learning his lesson from being called out that calling his new branch of math karyology was a hugely narcissistic thing to do. Got it. Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Different patterns for, okay, we'll do it as a dodecahedron, and we'll have these, and they'll act like Feynman diagrams, and we'll try these out.
Putting your information into the database and seeing what this system will spit out.
Aware of everything around you. That's how the universe is supposed to behave with it. So they'll have different patterns for, okay, we'll do it as a dodecahedron, and we'll have these, and they'll act like Feynman diagrams, and we'll try these out, and then we'll try the tetrahedrons together, but they'll only give us so much. And they were used to, when I was studying civil engineering, I remember there was an error correcting code for every 10 feet of error correcting codes would.
Quantum error correcting code, which is what I love the name, the Howard comma, so it's a good name. I mean,
I'm just hoping that I'm doing the research to see if Howard is my true last name, or if it was the name of a plantation.
Okay.
If it was the name of the plantation that my family was disenfranchised and owned.
For heaven's sakes, last names are something that one of our ancestors chose a while back. My last name is a product of what my ancestors did, most likely.
That then it won't remain the Howard comma.
I understand that. I get that. Trust me. But what's interesting is, though, I looked up some science, and I want to read directly from.
Oh, you looked up some science. Are you going to understand it, or are you just going to get it entirely wrong?
What I was able to pull up based on putting your information into the database and seeing what this system will spit out as to what are some of the potential.
Putting your information into the database? Do you mean querying the database that is the Google search database and then getting results?
Inventions or revolutions that could come from the QECs. And what I found was just amazing. And we'll talk about this a little bit too, but we'll talk about maybe some of these and just expand on them. Like the first one is faster than light communications, FTL communications.
I'm assuming he means the database that all the search engines gather to store their data. That probably would be a database.
We're talking about quantum entangled communication. Leveraging the Howard comma as a natural quantum error correction tool, this FTL communication system could enable instantaneous long-distance messaging by keeping the quantum state stable over vast distances. And that's really been one of my dreams, actually, is to be involved in some kind of way creating this, or being involved in a company building a quantum communications device. I brought this up to you before I even knew you were going to send me that science that you sent me the other day.
Yeah, and we didn't, Chris Seeley.
Oh, I so much want to know about science. Billy Carson got sent by Terrence Howard.
He put into, there was a paper recently written, I'll get the name of it. In the paper, they were comparing the Pythagorean comma to the Howard comma, or what they're calling the Howard comma, and showing that they were two separate things, but that it actually pulled it together. So he pulled this in.
What moron is basing any papers off of anything you say, Mr. Howard?
Into ChatGPT.
Except possibly psychiatrists and psychologists.
And ChatGPT began to rebuild the universe, or have a picture of laying out a framework.
ChatGPT rebuilt the universe, really? How? ChatGPT is designed to generate human-sounding responses. That's it. Well, it can also generate AI art now, but it is not going to build the universe.
For universal potential under different conditions. And it came up with this Howard comma, this error correcting code that is able to do faster than light travel. Like one of the biggest things that would be a hindrance in faster than light travel is you got to go through different areas of the universe where there's noise. And in that noise, based on their uncertainty, understanding, and Schrodinger equations in which they try to the probability effect of those things, where they're trying to understand the universe. And it's through
the probability effect? Schrodinger's cat is not about probability. It's about quantum states and how something can be in two states at once until it's observed. That reminds me of a joke, everyone. So, someone gets stopped by the police. The police look in the back of their car and they find a box. They open the box, and then they go to the owner of the car and say, do you know you have a dead cat in your trunk? And the guy goes, it is now.
Canceling out what might have happened
Yeah.
instead of being able to go directly to the source. Like in Star Trek, Scotty came up with the ability to do transwarp.
Yeah, they go through the transwarp. So the Borg gave them the idea, I think, in one of the season's episodes of
Scotty came up with the idea to transport. Can you at least bother to get Trek right? No, Scotty figured out how to transport at warp. It is correct that in Voyager, they kind of figure out how to use the Borg's transwarp conduits, which they later develop on their own.
a different version of
That
Star
you can
Trek.
be at warp drive and
Yeah.
still be able to transform or whatever. I forgot. But that's what beam me up, to be able to beam, at transwarp.
Right.
That was a big theory.
Teleportation.
Teleportation
Yeah.
in there. I'm like, oh, well, we're the means by which quantum entanglement takes place. It's being able to lock into another particle or another position.
Mhm.
You lock this spaceship into here.
Yeah.
You lock it with this.
Quantum teleportation is possible, they have found out, but not at large scales.
With this particular tone,
Mhm.
and now the lynchpin or the Howard comma is able to keep communication, and it's able to predict where this particular object or particle
Yeah.
will be, and be able to maintain subspace communication.
Right.
It doesn't matter the speed at which it's traveling at,
Right.
or its position, or what field it's going through.
Yeah.
It's able to predict all
That's
distribution of matter.
That's beautiful.
It doesn't get. I don't care what they've been doing in these universities.
Yeah.
None of it comes up to this. If I'm gonna throw modesty aside.
Yeah.
It doesn't come up to this. This is the fractal.
This is it.
This is the entire subspace of we have defined the electric force,
Mhm.
the gravitative force, the contractive force of the
Yeah.
universe.
I'm sorry I was muted. Well, Mr. Howard, what they're doing at universities is actually real science, real math. What you are doing is coming up with new delusions.
and patented it
Mhm.
and have proven out subsystems in it. We've defined the magnetic expansive force
Mhm.
and have patented those
Mhm.
and have built systems on it and have proven them out. And we've patented the common factor, the constitution between it,
Mhm.
which is the linchpin, which creates its own
And how many amendments does your Constitution have?
thing. It's like this
Yeah.
is the gift that mankind has been waiting for.
This is it.
But what do they do with it? They will keep kicking it to the side until I'm no longer here, and they'll think they'll walk through it. I didn't tell them what the true value of pi was.
Oh, goody! What is the true value of pi? And I would like to point out that for those of you who do not know anything about the Greek alphabet, that this is not the letter pi, either uppercase or lowercase. This is the letter phi, a different Greek letter that, as the screen says, represents the golden ratio. And honestly, the golden ratio gives me a headache at the best of times, but it is strongly associated with the Fibonacci sequence, which is correct.
There's a lot of things that I've left out because I did
Is it because you don't know them?
something different from what Tesla did.
Yeah.
Tesla made the mistake of writing everything
Tesla actually made things that worked, unlike you, Mr. Howard.
in Serbian or in English and all of his notes, so they can go and do his
They
stuff.
went and took it all.
When this came to me, I created an entirely new language
Oh, wow.
for it that me and my family
Yeah.
and the people that work closely with me, all of the secrets are tied into there.
Oh, wow.
Mr. Howard, I assure you, we all know about English, and you did not create it.
Pi is a whole number. Pi is not 3.1415.
Pi is a whole number. Really? Let us finish this.
92653589793. That's not the value of pi.
You are correct. That is not the value of pi. That is an approximation. But pi is not a whole number. I suspect you might have been reading some math books that actually say use an exact value in terms of pi. Now, it may surprise Mr. Howard and other people to know that there is an exact value of pi. We represent it with the Greek letter pi. The reason we do that is because we can't represent the exact value of pi as a decimal or a fraction.
Pi is a whole number.
Oh, wow.
And if they understood that the universe does not multiply,
Pi is not a whole number. Pi has never been a whole number. It is an irrational number.
Because a confined space is not able to multiply. The way the universe multiplies is by dividing and becoming more.
It continues to.
The way the universe multiplies is by dividing and becoming more. Well, I hope the universe didn't learn division from you.
It divides itself.
Big giant, gas clouds divide themselves and become stars. And then those stars eventually live their life and they explode and it divides again and it creates.
So you heard it here first, everyone. Not only does the universe divide to reproduce itself, it is apparently asexual and does it by mitosis.
More gas, which then the gas then forms into more stars and more solar
and contract together and keep recontracting itself together. So we have to revisit our understanding of multiplication, because multiplication, that means it would go against the laws of conservation of energy.
Right.
Wait, multiplication would go against the laws of conservation of energy. Oh, let's find out how. This should be good.
You're able, if it's not truly just division. And so I've approached mathematics from that number theory idea and concept. And look,
Mr. Howard, I suspect you don't know what number theory is.
What it's produced. It's produced all of these things. It's
and to me, I mean, just
a lot of silly podcasts and people laughing at you. Yes, it has produced that. But no, it's produced nothing real. I'm sorry, Mr. Howard.
Thinking, and I could be wrong on this, but if the universe, as the way they describe it, seems to violate the law of conservation of energy if it continues to grow and expand with no new energy coming in, because you're violating, like,
we do not know that the universe is a closed system, but as far as we know, the net energy of the universe is zero. So this is not a valid point.
If I try to make a perpetual motion machine that runs off of only magnets, there's only so much power I can get out of it.
It has to interact with something else.
It has to.
And so our universe expands out, like our solar systems expands out in the Oort cloud, and it bumps into other solar systems, which regenerate it. And then when 4 of them come together at 120 degrees.
How do I know that any attempt of yours to make a perpetual motion machine would fail, Billy Carson?
Angles, then guess what? They convert back from magnetism and expanding into an electric charge. And now they're going from southwest, and now they're going northeast.
You really need to learn that electricity and magnetism are the same force, and then some of the things you say would be a little less stupid.
Right.
And they're headed back to the poles of the star and the poles of the planet to go back into the process again. That's the breathing mechanism of our universe.
Yeah, because the universe is alive.
It's a living being.
It's a living being.
We're little creatures on this living being that's like, yo, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, just like we have bacteria in our gut that's alive. We have
mating.
Right? I mean, we have microscopic bugs on our skin,
That's
whoever said bacteria and members of the kingdom protista, or what used to be the kingdom protista, aren't alive.
Keeping us clean from the monsters. We have macrophages inside of our spleen and our blood system that attack any cell that's not up to par and eats it alive.
I think he meant macrophages, not microphages.
And that's why fasting, if you have some kind of cancer or illness, a tumor, the body will cannibalize itself for anything that's non-useful.
Yep, that's
if you're suffering from all of this stuff, the potential gifts for humanity with vaccines, if you're suffering any of that stuff, all you have to do, take the time, fast, and allow those blood clots themselves to have to be eaten by the body.
What? First off, fasting is not a cure for cancer, which he just implied. Secondly, fasting is not going to undo vaccines. I don't even know where he got that from. And do not take the advice of Terrence Howard on health for anything.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to go through the desperation of not eating for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
Force the body to turn on new genes.
Yeah. And I'm a witness to.
What? So far, you've avoided annoying biologists immensely, but nothing you've said here is correct. I think some biologists are going to have some things to say about this, Mr. Howard.
So what happened? So I didn't eat for a couple of weeks, and I lost 22 pounds. My body cannibalized itself.
Yes, if you don't eat for a couple of weeks, you will lose weight. There is a good chance you might also die, so don't do that.
And you're all clear again.
I'm all clear. I'm completely reset. And completely, in a weird kind of way, it was one of
If only you had been completely reset, you might have decided on a career not selling products to gullible people through your podcast.
I can't say this is a great thing that happened to me, but
Everything's a blessing.
health-wise, yes, it's one of the greatest things that happened to me health-wise because I feel completely renewed. You know, I have a fresh start physically.
Same.
It's incredible.
Same. I wanted to talk about one of the other aspects that it's at with the quantum entanglement, what it's capable of ultimately doing. The conclusion was the Howard comma could be modeled as this is what ChatGPT said.
Yeah.
This is not me putting words into it.
Oh, for heaven's sake. ChatGPT is not an expert on quantum physics. It's not an expert on theology. It's not an expert on religion. It's not an expert on anything. It just aggregates data it collected from the internet and tries to come up with human-sounding responses using linear matrix algebra and statistics.
Is them in analyzing the patterns, analyzing the lynchpin, analyzing the geometry and the grand unified supersymmetry associated with it, and its potential uses. It says the Howard comma could be modeled as a sub-quantum field constant that acts as a harmonic and geometric correction across quantum fields by stabilizing and aligning quantum states. It could provide a foundation for faster than light. Wow, faster than light.
Yeah.
Faster than light, subspace communication through non-local interactions and harmonic resonances.
Yeah.
You know, that's
life-changing because.
But if you had used the Oxford comma in that sentence, it would be far more clear.
Now you can have deep space travel because one of the biggest problems is, let's say we hop on a spaceship and we're using conventional rocketry and we get ourselves all the way out to Jupiter and we want to communicate back with home base on Earth. That's going to take a long time.
He's about to say something incredibly wrong here as well.
A month.
They'll be bouncing it in their straight line ideas in comparison to staying entangled.
Exactly.
And harmonically locked and linked.
Yes. And the only delay you'll have in communicating with Earth is how much time did it take your ship to broadcast it to the nearest communications array. So if you're only 2 million miles away from a communications array, a few minutes for them to get the signal, instantaneously transmit to Earth.
Just for the record, Voyager is beyond our solar system, and even it only takes hours to get back to Earth. To get to Jupiter would take less than an hour at its farthest point.
Earth instantaneously transmitted back to the communications array, 8 minutes to get back to your ship or whatever the number is. So yeah, it's just it's a way of really making deep space travel a reality.
Well, because we go past the noise. The noise occurs in the magnetic field, in the expansion of it. The noise occurs in these spheres interacting, in those spheres that we are interacting with. We call those the electron cloud. That's the noise that's getting in the way. So if you could get to the electric side of it, which these pathways, the lynchpin, those struts show you the direction of the electric side. So you're able to bypass that noise and stay, because magnetism is always out here. That's noisy. The electricity is going to be right here.
More coherent.
Yeah, right there. Right there. And so everything becomes possible if you apply these things. There's no field of human interest.
Everything becomes possible if you ignore reality.
Or endeavor that cannot be benefited from having the fundamentals, re-examining the fundamentals. So I keep asking universities out there that care about having a future, take the time to explore these things. If you explore them and you want to have a conversation, then we can talk about licensing and we'll make you the most powerful university on the planet, because
the reason why universities are ignoring you is because, one, universities aren't trying to produce things. Universities are centers of learning. And two, anyone who has listened to you for more than 5 seconds knows you don't have the slightest clue what you're talking about.
Everyone else will have to come to you in order to get that, but it'll be on the first come, first serve. You know, now it's no longer just open to the Black universities that I was hoping would come and support. You know, I have to now step outside, but if they don't want to explore it, then we are producing lynchpin. We are producing our lives. We are producing the harmonic wave resequencer, you know, as we speak. We have my people working on all of this stuff. So you just won't be a part of the future if you don't apply yourself to the present. And get away from that past garbage that we've been taught.
Everybody can't go.
You know, Mr. Howard, I bet the university I go to would love to have you speak on acting. Nothing else, just acting. If you reached out to universities for that, and you haven't kind of destroyed your reputation with this, you might still be getting invited to universities.
Oh,
No, they can't.
The problem with some of these universities is they get their funding, these engineering, these science, they get their funding, and their funding is based off of speaking the same old-fashioned dogma. And once they go one iota out of the parameter of what they've been told they can stay in, they get the threat of losing funding. But people have to realize that there's other people out there that are interested in funding and being a part of something innovative and change in the world. We have to let go of the.
If you don't know the basics of engineering, math, or other things, and it's quite obvious you don't, there's a reason you get ignored. If you're going to tell me that the universe is running on Adinkra codes, which are used by computers that are also used in web browsers, which just isn't quite true, I'm going to assume you don't know what you're talking about.
This safety box mindset, staying inside the box and being safe, and think outside of the box, and that's where all the.
Well, to be fair, math can be quite dogmatic, but that's because it's based on rules.
The joy and the bliss is when you start maneuvering through the universe and walking in your true power and let go of the fear. The best part of life is on the other side.
Yeah, and it's like Stanford University and its relationship with Hewlett Packard, because it has a self-sustaining endowment. Stanford is able to move, with ubiquitous carelessness, because they have
ubiquitous carelessness. Those two words don't go together, Terry.
Of their own funding coming from the products that they're producing, and they've been able to accomplish this with fundamentals that are now basically becoming antiquated.
Yeah.
If you're able to accomplish that, so imagine what a university will be, an engineering school and department will be able to do with these things. You won't need the government funding.
Yeah.
You won't need to answer to anyone except to truth.
Yep.
And that's where we should be right now. But the truth is it's a hot thing to hold, or cold. I think the truth is really cold, and you can't keep it next to you unless you come down.
Yeah, I believe it, man. Another invention that came out of the ChatGPT, even putting your science into it, holographic data storage retrieval.
Oh my. I have nothing to say. That was just another facepalm because, my gosh, stop using ChatGPT this way.
But it's saying that the Howard comma could allow for holographic error correcting codes, enabling data to be stored in a higher dimensional holographic subquantum field.
Well, instead of it being.
What does that even mean?
Being laid out linearly and binary and binary communication. And that's why I said it's so much information.
Line by line.
Binary communication? I mean, it's not that we don't communicate using binary. It's just that the binary is code that stands for other things.
Line by line.
Line by line, you're able to now lay it according to a grid. There's 12.
Mr. Howard, when we're using binary, I think you mean bit by bit or byte by byte. When things go over your network cables, it's not line by line. It's bit by bit.
Panels on the lynchpin.
Yeah.
Those 12 panels will also immediately resonate to the 12 tones in music theory. So you're able to use musical theory and layer information, fold it together the way the universe folds it together, to where you just create vortices instead of these long extended lines. So it's not like something needs to be developed or explored. No, the information is right there. The Howard comma, the equation for it has already been written out and created.
Yeah.
Now it's just applying it.
So you're talking about storing.
What is the equation? Please share it with us. Now, I know you think the grand unified field theory is that one to the third power equals the absolute value of pi, but in most number bases, that is wrong. Maybe some number bases I'm not aware of that is true, but it's certainly not true in any of the positional numbering systems.
Data in a volume versus storing data in a line.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's looking at something and hearing that thing for the moment and not for all of this unnecessary movement.
Right.
Catching it right here and containing it back into the seed that expands out. And like Lorentz, one of the things he talked about was his electron model. And the problem with it, he thought the electron started as a sphere, and then it began to become expanded out. It to turn into an oval the further away it got out. But the truth was the
Yes, I love it when it's clear that people just Googled a name without understanding anything they did. And Terry is quite good at this.
electron, or that cloud, starts off in
For example, I have never been able to find where Gödel talked about how the identity property ruins mathematics.
compression as like those petals on the flower of life.
Right.
You know, like there's a guy, Michael Evans, you know, who a contemporary of mine, who was working on opening the flower, and he had the tetron ray, the trion ray, which was those petals. But that's how an electron behaves at the start under high pressure. It goes into the low pressure that it expands out as a sphere. So when we're able to take high pressure information and from high pressure states and lock them into a system where they're refracted within the entire system. And that's what this does. It allows you for those 12 different spaces to where the information is just basically stored in a crystal of water. It's stored in the water itself. Like John Keeley, his water didn't make the machine work. The water and the machine would work together and find a sympathetic harmony.
All right, so let's bring this up here. And I'd like to remind you to like, comment, and subscribe. And Triceratops is not a Ceratopian dinosaur. Says the 12-tone scale is the basis for a specific type of music invented by Arnold Schoenberg, and then goes on to say it's doubtful Terry knows this. Well, I assure you, from the time I've been familiar with Terry, the fact that he doesn't know something never prevents him from mentioning it.
Harmony, and then be able to multiply its interaction or potential. That's what we need.
Talking about combining hardware with molecular.
Yes,
the two go together.
The two life forms, because like if you want to multiply, you know, this fraction by this fraction, you have to make them dimensionally equal. So you find the life force.
If you want to multiply this fraction by this fraction, you have to make them dimensionally equal. Terry, do you know what a denominator is? A denominator is not a dimension. And you don't have to do that to multiply things. The problem is, if you're going to multiply different units, the units you get have to make sense. That's why you don't multiply $1 by $1 and get $1 squared. If you have one group of $1, you have $1.
In each one, the life principle is represented in its prime resonant frequency. Then you will find common factors by which they can interact. And that's one of the things that the Howard comma does, is it lays out those interactions, or where those vortices meet, and those are those common areas.
It keeps a stable connection between them. And this is powerful stuff. Wow. Another one, quantum subspace navigation. So it says, using the Howard comma as a guide through subspace, this navigation system would allow a spacecraft to detect and compensate for variations in space-time, making it a viable for interstellar exploration. It could also be used as an advanced quantum sensor to ping subspace layers, detecting gravitational anomalies or other cosmic events in real time.
Well, again, it's just laying out a framework. You know, depending on the condition, the pressure conditions, whether it's the motion and pressure conditions of a given area, you can either take different ratios of the Howard comma and break them down into the Tetrian, into the Huntian, into the Aubrian, into the heavenly, or some of these other aspects of it. But you're able to predict where the matter will distribute based on its density.
This makes as much sense of saying you can use Joseph Conway's The Game of Life as a cancer cure. These two things aren't connected.
And the conditions, and then, but it also takes into account, like the lynchpin, you don't have it just going in one direction linearly. It goes in all directions, expanding volumetrically the way the universe behaves. So it predicts all the same volumetric similarities. So you're able to predict where this will go. Like if you want, I'll give a secret away. If you wanted to travel from here to the other side of the galaxy, you can use a lot of propellants, you can use a lot of time, or all you have to do is behave like a bubble does. If it's in opposition to the environment it's in, it's going to seek a place where it has equanimity and balance. So it's going to rise on its own. You wrap yourself in the...
I would love to know what he means by equanimity. I think it means equality, but he still doesn't know what that means.
Key of that other galaxy. or the edge of that galaxy. You wrap yourself up in that vibration. Guess what? You don't need to use any energy except maintaining that vibration, and the universe will move you over here, because if you're at a tone that is discordant to the area you're in, you will have.
So you can use tones for interstellar travel. I would love to see that one work on a smaller scale. Just imagine how much you could use it to revolutionize travel on Earth if this were a real thing, which it isn't.
That Magnus effect of a bubble, and you can move yourself based on taking on tone and taking off tone. That's the secrets that's been given to us. And now we have the geometry that predicts those tones.
Right.
And now we have the applications for it and building them.
So we have a geometry, we have a shape that predicts notes. How?
Predictable. That's where we need to be walking towards.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. I just want to live long enough to see some of this stuff happen, because it's incredible.
I guarantee you could live for 10,000 years and you will never see any technology based off of what Terrence Howard is saying. You would have to correct an awful lot before you can even invent anything.
Then we have the, okay, well, here's something interesting. We're talking about zero-point energy now. Resonance-based power generation. By utilizing the harmonic corrections from the Howard commas within a sub-quantum field, it might be possible to generate power through resonance with a zero-point energy or space-time harmonic.
Well, think about how...
Is anyone else impressed that ChatGPT could apparently understand this amazing word salad? I personally am.
How resonances behave, or that S term. You know, it's actually a full vortice that's happening. So it's pushing up, and then if this is pushing up, you create this energy. Like they do something like that with the harp. The harpo.
Harp. Yeah, they have that in on the west coast of the United States.
Yeah, and they send these microwaves up and create a big bubble on the surface of the Earth. That bubble gets hit by particles, and it brings it back into the Earth's environment. Well,
one, I'm pretty sure HARP has been shut down for years. And secondly, I don't think that's how HARP works, because HARP was designed to study the ionosphere.
Well, that's the same way, but now we're doing it on a microscopic level. But we're not doing it with microwaves. We're actually doing it with, with the dopamine that the universe likes.
With the dopamine that the universe likes? Dopamine is a chemical in your brain, Terry.
We're not forcing it with heat. We're bringing it with the shape that it wants. So you draw in energy by creating the condition here. Then the snapback is going to keep a flow of energy, and then you put that on its own resonance, on its own repeating timer, and you're able to generate an untold amount of energy. Like even with the projectile propulsion patent, we're getting 180% out of it, which is over unity. So no matter what charge we put in there, we're multiplying its potential. Proven. It's already proven. That's why the patent was granted. So now I'm just like, oh wow, do I have to go to other countries in order to bring these things to light? Or will my parent country support the steps that the innovation? Because I'm not going to just sit it quietly and relegate myself to just being some actor. Turning tricks for turning emotional tricks for tips.
I understand. I get it. I understand what you mean.
It's enough. It's enough of that.
And what you just said, talking about the shape, helping to generate that energy wave, scientists did experiments with pyramids, tetrahedrons, and they found that if you put plants and grow plants inside of a tetrahedron shape, the plants grow faster because it harnesses.
Is it possible that Terrence Howard is annoyed because one of his most famous roles was as a pimp? The one for which he got an Oscar nomination?
More energy, more natural energy from the
universe. Resonant energy that's going back and forth, that oscillatory thing that's always happening, that thing we feel in here and makes us connect, but then we're told, nope, you got to look away. You can't connect with people. You can't stay locked in. When you allow yourself to align geometrically properly with individuals and you talk from the place of God.
If you allow yourself to align properly with and geometrically with individuals, you won't bump into them. I mean, this is an amazing discovery, Terry. But perhaps it doesn't let you talk with God.
Then God speaks.
Right. Absolutely. Another one, they said quantum-based cosmic internet. So we have the World Wide Web, but they're talking about the cosmic web, right? So they say,
oh, for heaven's sake. The World Wide Web is just a name we give to part of the internet that uses hypertext transfer protocol. It has nothing to do with quantum communication other than the fact that we use computers, and computers are based, at least in part, on our understanding of certain quantum effects. If we had a quantum internet, I wonder why. It would just be the internet using quantum communications technology.
An interconnected web of quantum communication channels stabilized by the Howard comma, enabling near instant data transfer between planetary systems. We can be on Mars and instantaneously get something off Google from here.
And if we can get that information as traveled through electricity, then that electricity can also be transformed or collected together, and it's the doorway for teleportation.
Right.
At the end of the day, if you can send the sound, you can send the image. If you can send the image, you can send the condition. If you can send the condition, you can send the person.
Yeah. Well, because the Howard comma can predict. Is it the Howard comma that's predicting? That's error correcting.
No, the Howard comma, actually, it's like if we put, like I said, you put the lynchpin in the solar apex, it predicts every.
So this thing I made up can do whatever I say it can, because it's amazing and because I'm amazing. And I want you to believe that what I'm saying is absolutely accurate. And trust me, I'm not suffering from any delusions whatsoever.
Star on the galactic, the celestial, and the ecliptic plane. So it's actually predicting where those stars are going to be, and therefore you can predict where the moons are going to be. Now you can predict where other planets are going to interact with it, and you can have a.
We have ways of predicting where celestial bodies are going to be. They aren't the Howard comma.
Full model and know where every atom is going to. That's what's been given to us.
That's the key. So in teleportation, the secret is you have to know where every atom is, its spin rate, and its vibration. So that now, if you have the cosmic internet or the capability of doing that, you have an enormous, unlimited amount of storage capacity, which is the biggest problem with teleportation. We can only teleport.
Wait, what? Listen, the molecules that make up our body do not require unlimited information to store. There's a lot of information there, and it may require a lot of storage space for a computer to deal with that, but we don't need infinite memory to do that. If we did have infinite memory, we could also make a universal Turing machine.
Or like one particle at a time right now. But all of a sudden, if you can predict in a biological human being or even an animal, right, or even this table, where every atom is in the resonant frequency of that atom, and transmit that instantaneously, now you can teleport a person, a table, a building, a house, anything you want.
Well, because you're not breaking it down into individual particles. You're actually wrapping the entire system, and that entire system slips into the in-between spaces. That system, the vibratory force, you can't distinguish where it's at anymore, and so it takes the.
So apparently we can make wormholes in time and space by vibrating things. Good to know.
The smallest position, even though it's still vibrating and covering this entire space of who you are right here, but you're only seeing it having this effect. It's just an illusion of our size of where we are. So when you let go of that illusion, now you're able to generate anything in any place that you want. And those particle replicators, all of that is true.
You know, replication and everything. Which would free the world. You're talking about 0-point energy, which means everybody has power right where they are. No need for a power grid. Teleportation.
I think that is not at all what 0-point energy means.
Taking the pressure off of travel, right? You're talking about food replication. You're having food directly where you are, instantaneously having access to food, bypassing the whole system.
So basically, Terrence Howard watched Star Trek, and he thinks he can create Star Trek's fictional technology.
Some of these patented seeds and all this GMOs.
You recreate the condition for them. That's all you have to do with transmutation. Recreate the condition of this particular element. You don't need to have gold inside or silver inside of your electronics. All you have to do is create the condition of them, and therefore have the electronics carry themselves over. Say the electrical charge or the signal will carry itself over if you know how to create the condition. And that's a bit of time.
For heaven's sakes. I don't think Terry understands what a logic gate is.
tongue in cheek right now.
Yeah.
I'm not letting all of that out.
And I get it, man. Well, this is a great conversation. This is just mind blowing. Just a conversation I've wanted to have for a long time.
I know.
Mind blowing is an interesting way of saying migraine inducing for those who get migraines.
Long time.
I just got a question for you.
Ahead,
what was, when you first stepped out
Yeah.
and started questioning the conditions and the information that you had been taught,
mm-hmm.
when you first started questioning that, what was the response from your family?
Oh man, it wasn't good. My initial response, well, my mother understood everything. She got it. Now I wasn't giving her a lot of deep knowledge yet because I was very young, but she was open to whatever I was telling her. Little things that I was seeing and begin to question. She was, look into it, or advanced beings exist. She didn't say alien, advanced beings exist.
Yeah.
But outside of my mother, everyone else thought I was just crazy. They didn't believe it. They questioned it. They were scared of it. Some of my kids were scared of the information, scared of what I was saying, what I was learning, and what I was researching. I've had family members tell me that I was worshiping Satan and I was going to burn in hell and I wouldn't make it to paradise. So some of them were Jehovah's Witnesses.
My family were Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay, so that's paradise, not heaven. So I would, so I was when I was building this Fort Terra Nova project, this underground base back in the 2000s, early 2000s. I was told that it's just all Satan and devil worship and all this kind of stuff. Anything that
You were building an underground base. Why does that not surprise me?
questioned or anything that I perceived to be different or came up with a different hypothesis or thesis on it, it was all scoffed. It was, it was pretty bad. It took some time, but my oldest daughter and my youngest son resonated to it more. Now, our son that we have, he's only 12 now. He resonates with everything we're talking about. So out of the 6 kids, 3 are resonating. The other 3 aren't really resonating. But my relatives, my siblings, I should say, my siblings, no.
You're still the devil to them.
Oh yeah, I was told that I must have sold my soul to the devil, and all the. But I'm always good when they need some money, though. When they need the money, I'm always good. The money's good. The devil money's always good when they need the money.
And then they thank Jehovah for you giving them money. It's a fascinating little world, but I felt guilty because I'm the one that helped my brothers become a Jehovah's Witness. I talked to them about it, and it did teach me a lot about finding the truth. But I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to go to the very truth. And in looking at some of the doctrine and the information that wasn't at the source.
Listen, as an ex-Mormon, I can empathize with finding out what you taught or what you were taught as a child is in fact incorrect. But you went off the deep end somewhere else.
It wasn't the source. It was maybe a 4th or 5th rendition of some source material, but I wanted to see the source code. And you have to dig for that yourself. And Walter Russell said it, the universe.
Oh, for heaven's sake. You wanted to see the source code for the universe. Well, Terrence Howard, we all know the universe was written in machine language because that was the first programming language.
She's a very jealous, nature is a very jealous God. And she only reveals her secrets when you are alone and in private with her in your soul. So it's like you've got to get to that place and reconnect with the universe. You don't need information from anyone else. I told you half of these things I would wake up in my dream and I would go back to that place where the older version of myself who was talking to me, so there's an interaction between who you are now, who you will become, and who you have been in the past, because we think about where we were. So we keep the past in there instead of locked into the future. But whatever that being was, whatever that condition that was taking place within me, that allowed for an older version of myself to come and give me guidance at 4 and 5. And it was basically the guidance to follow. You don't need their information. I'm going to give you the ability to wake up inside your mind, go to the Akashic record, and the proof will be in the patents. The proof will be in the innovations. The proof will be in the products. And the proof will also be in your nature. My nature, even though I've played so many bad.
Terrence Howard is also the one that enabled the Mesopotamians in the Book of Mormon to build the Bronze Age submarines out of wood.
Guys, I will take my time and will not kill anything in my house. I call the fly while it's trying to land someplace, even though my wife wants me to kill it because it could spread germs. I'm just calling it Terry because I know Terry doesn't want to be locked inside this house and doesn't want to get hit with this fly swatter. I know Terry's looking for a way out.
Yeah.
You know, come on, Terry, just be still. And I put that energy out, and 9 times out of 10, I'm always able to capture it and take it outside. And
9 times out of 10, I'm always able to capture it. So 1 time out of 10, you are unable to capture it, which would mean you are not always able to capture it.
You know, and I feel this weight lifted off of me because they walk in there thinking that everything's going to be fine and exploring. They don't know it's a death trap. You know, and they don't want to destroy your food. They're just trying to cooperate and coexist with us. So we have to start recognizing, you know, an ant lives for 15 years on average. When you
no, ants usually live for a couple of weeks.
Smash one of them, you're destroying great relationships. So it's taking everything into account. When you're aware of the universe is aware of you. When you ignore the universe, then you no longer exist to the universe itself. But the moment that you look at it, the universe looks back and smiles.
It's a mirror, and it's a mirror of your energy too. Absolutely. And I try to tell people that because we know that through the double slit experiment that, you know, electrons are conscious because they make conscious decisions to collapse.
We do not know that electrons are conscious because of the double slit experiment.
Themselves into digital bits of matter or become waves of potential. That means that everything is conscious. And if everything is conscious, then we have to treat everything with a certain level of respect and dignity and grace. Is exactly what you're talking about. Imagine teaching your kids from the time they're born that their clothes, their backpack is conscious.
Everything's alive.
Everything's alive. And if they understood that and you taught them respect and dignity towards those things, they wouldn't disrespect their toys, their clothes, and others because they'd be brought up believing that everything is alive.
Everything is, and not just alive, everything is made from the creator and is the foundation and the fabric of the creator. So when you disrespect anything, you are disrespecting yourself. You know, it's like putting a cigarette out on your own hand or arm just because you don't have the ability to feel it.
Right.
You lack that ability to feel it. Maybe you should work on your senses so that you can become aware of the things that you're supposed to be taking in. And that's what the meditation is supposed to do. But
I am pretty sure most people do not put out cigarettes on their arm just because they can't feel it. Even people who have lost feeling in their arms know that if they put a cigarette out on their arm, it will cause negative effects even if they don't feel them.
When we're unaware of where we've come from, when we're unaware of where we're going, you know, then we can't find a destination that we want. Like right now we have we're putting a foundation together for the museum. It'll be the Black History Inventors Hall of Fame Museum. You know, the first museum that's ever been dedicated to just Black inventors and our massive contributions to the world we live in, you know, whereas other races, they have so many of their idols and their ancestors that they can turn to look for guidance and say, you know what, I can become an astronaut. You know what, I can become I can become a neuroscientist, you know, because such and such did this. I can make this. This innovation, Black people, oftentimes all that's presented in front of us, I can become this pimp, I become this drug dealer, I can become this athlete, you know, I can become this rapper. And we see where that whole...
That's what we're shown over and over and over. And the programming goes in and your brain says, oh, this is what I can be. This is the pinnacle of what I can get to, not realizing that there's so much more.
No.
And it's only because we don't see ourselves in those other positions on a consistent basis that we don't believe we can do those things.
The thing is, he's kind of right about some of this. Not all of it, but he is right about some of this. Representation does matter. And the thing is, if you would actually do some research on black scientists, black neurosurgeons, black astronauts, he would find some. I can name a few on my own, but if he's going to assume that a lot of things were invented by black people that weren't, such as the tractor, whereas I think he's actually thinking of the McCormick's Reaper, which might have been invented by McCormick's slave, he's going to be sorely disappointed, and he's going to be miseducating young people who actually need valid role models. I hope he actually has people do the research if he's going to open the museum, and not just go off on what he wants to believe.
Like if you think about Louis T. Lattimore, they actually called him, he's an inventor from the 1870s, 1800s. He ended up working for Edison as a draftsman, but then he filed a patent for the carbon filament, which is responsible for the sustaining light that Edison received his patent for the light bulb. Edison got a patent for the spark.
Yeah.
But the sustenance of that carbon filament, that was produced by Louis Howard Lattimore. He was the one that has the patent on it, but you'll never see anything mentioned. And just knowing that as an idea, or that the brakeman, Elijah Woods, half of the things that he was able to accomplish, all of these men of...
I'm assuming he must have been a different Elijah Woods than the one who was in The Lord of the Rings.
That has been obscure to our visual parameters. So we can't attach a sight to him and say, no, I'm gonna hold on to this one and I'm gonna follow the course that this one led me through. We're missing that.
Yes. And we need it. We significantly need it. When I go a lot of places, because I'm 6'4", a lot of people, did you play basketball? Did you play football? What do you do for a living? I tell them I'm a scientist. I'm a scientist. That's what I tell people. And you got just to see the look on a lot of these people's faces when you first tell them that. They're like, huh? A scientist? Like they're completely shocked. Like, this black guy just told me he's a scientist. You can see it in their face, in their eyes.
There's only one black scientist. That's Neil deGrasse.
right. And so I love doing that because, people will put you in a box.
No, that would not be the reason I would assume you're not a scientist, Billy. I would assume you're not a scientist, Mr. Carson, because I've heard you speak and you don't know any science. My thing is to show people
there's so many other things we can be doing. And this is one of them. When I first got into this whole field of, the knowledge business, if you want to call it that, I went out to go to these conferences, and a lot of the conferences, these conscious conferences, they didn't have any people of color. I was the only one. And how did I get in? I literally was contacting them every single year for 3 years until finally they said, okay, come on in. We'll give you a small room and give you a room that doesn't charge any money and see how you do. And when I did it, the room was not only sold out, standing room only. And I did a great lecture, and I used that DVD and sent it to another conference and another conference. So all these conferences that had only white faces speaking on these topics that we speak on in science and metaphysics and manifestation and ancient civilizations, all of a sudden I began showing up in all these conferences as the only person of color. And initially, the programming code in the minds of our people is, who'd you sell out? How'd you sell out to get in here? And how come you're the token black person? Instead of seeing me and going, this is great, man, somebody to represent us and, to put forth so that we have knowledge too in these areas. The initial response, it's changed over time, but the initial response was negative. So I watched it go from a very hard negative response initially to then them getting more comfortable seeing me consistently building and building and building. Now it's becoming accepted. So what that showed me was the more you see this, the more we continue to see it, the more we accept it, the more we believe.
This is also kind of right that Billy Carson is probably not telling the truth that he was invited. Because anyone who has seen his podcasts knows that he doesn't have any clue about the subjects he's pretending to know.
Believe it's possible. In the beginning, they didn't even believe it was possible.
No, but you see what you expect.
Yeah.
There's an old saying, you'll never see Paris unless you take it with you. You have to have an expectation of what you're going to see there, and then you fulfill that expectation, or it exceeds that expectation, or it doesn't live up to your expectation. But you have to have an idea of where you're going. So for young men and women, if I'd known about black inventors, but the fact that I didn't know about these black inventors, that's one of the things that drove me to I'm going to make the biggest impact in the world of science that's ever been made. I said in my mind when I was a kid watching the cosmos that I was going to discover that grand unified field equation.
Wow.
And you didn't.
Going to do that.
Yeah.
I was going to do that. And I spent every minute working towards it. I'm still spending. And the only other thing I'm working towards now, because I'm great with that, I've accomplished that.
Yeah.
No, you have not. 1 cubed equals the absolute value of pi is not the grand unified theory.
I'm still trying to use my telekinesis. I'm still trying. Every day I spend at least a couple minutes trying to move something with my mind.
That's good though.
I'm trying to. I haven't succeeded yet in this place, but that's what I'm working on now. I'm like, God, you've given me this knowledge. Now give me the ability to make magic as I choose to. I would love those little bitty things now, and no longer outside seeking what was out there. It's just having moments like this of us being able to share and and grow. But like what we're doing with the museum now, like James Howard, they've put together a Kickstarter to raise money, so that we can set this museum in place. I would love to leave that, for anyone out there that want to encourage young minds, of any color. To go through there, because I was inspired by Einstein and Niels Bohr, and Feynman. I was inspired by all of these people that were not of my color. But how much more so when I see someone of my color, when I saw you out there for years making that hard stand, all I could do was just applaud. And then when I first came on the red carpet and talked about the stuff and you popped out and said, no, I think he's having an enlightening moment. That's what I think is taking place. Whereas everybody else was, oh, he's going crazy.
Yes, and they can. And to further add to this, they can also Google Black scientists, Black mathematicians, Black politicians, pretty much any field they aspire to be, and there's probably someone who looks like them doing it.
They're going to rebuild Saturn. Well, bitch, I just rebuilt Saturn. Excuse my language.
It's okay.
I just rebuilt the.
It's real, though. It's real, man.
There.
Yeah, it's real. I get it, man. And like I was saying earlier, it's.
There's a difference between telling the truth and being flat out wrong. Most of this, they're just flat out wrong. I do not know that they're lying, because that implies that they know they're not telling the truth.
For what we do, it just takes a lot of courage. I mean, a lot of people, they don't try to expand outward because they feel the pressure is going to be so great on them, and they're going outside the boundaries of what the majority are saying they're allowed to do and not to do. But thankfully, people like ourselves are outside of the programming code.
We're free.
Yeah, we're free, man. It's free, completely free.
It's nothing like being free. And when they so-called gave us emancipation or freed us, no, you will free us when we have received the compensation that would have been paid to our ancestors so that we can move forward. We're still standing outside the gates. Okay, well, we worked for you for 400 years. What do we get for all of this? Do we get to pass and say, oh, yeah, great?
This is a vast oversimplification of what people are arguing for when they argue for reparations. Because it's not just what happened early in our history, it's also that there have been decades of systemic oppression that are continuing to keep people in that situation.
We gave you freedom when you've enriched yourselves off of all of the work that we've done. Now, I've got an idea. Since the Jews have received their reparations from Germany, I believe Germany is still paying reparations to the descendants of those people. We've paid reparations to the Japanese in the internment camps. We've paid reparations to the Chinese that was misused on the railroads. We've paid.
Have we? I don't think we have.
Leave, or I think they're working on it. But we paid reparations for the Native Americans.
Yes, we have.
But for the descendants of slaves that actually built this country, that built Wall Street, that the first thing that was traded on Wall Street was bonds for about Black people, about slaves. Those were the first publicly traded things on Wall Street.
Facts.
So if we've enriched this country,
I am pretty sure that something like that was traded on Wall Street, but I doubt it was the first thing.
For 400 years, and you don't have the money. There's a thing called the Brattle Group, independent statistics organization that did an evaluation on African Americans or the descendants of slaves, and they said that it's over 108 to 131 trillion dollars that's owed to the descendants of slaves.
Wow.
Now, we don't make that in 10 years.
No,
our country does not have that money free to pay out.
GDP.
So they're never able to pay us. So since they have built their entire country off of our labor for 400 years without any type of compensation, the only thing that I would think would be fair.
I also don't think this is entirely accurate either. Now, I am going to can't say that it wasn't a significant part, but there was also the exploitation of the northern workers.
is for the next 400 years
Mhm.
or 500 years or however long it's been,
Mhm.
the descendants of slaves should not have to pay any taxes.
Yeah.
And now the African American community becomes an opportunity zone where other communities
Sure.
can now invest in, and you can grow. And it's the same tax credit
Yeah.
that has been given to states that allow for a lot of innovation and money to come in to the states for filming and for production. We are able to do that. And since we so-called only make up 13% of the population, which I find very strange,
That's a
that
small
Black
number.
people only make up 13% of
That
the
seems
American
impossible, but if
population.
it is,
Why would you find that strange? Left-handed people only make up 12% of the population. It's just a number.
that's a small amount of money. If you don't pay taxes, it's not that much money.
It's 13% you lose, and you'll gain it 1,000-fold.
Yes.
You know, for a reason.
First of all, the math doesn't work that way, so don't try that. I suspect it would actually be a much smaller percentage for reasons I'm not going to go into.
Approach to solving these problems, you know, like I'm sitting here watching them in their.
But you yourself have hinted at without realizing.
Their elections this year. What are they talking about?
Oh, garbage. It's look, he said this and she said that, and it's like I'm watching two elementary school kids at the playground fighting. Who's standing on business? Who's coming with real concepts, ideas, solutions to problems? Nobody. It's about tit for tat and propaganda.
Yeah, it's like they're voting for a homecoming king or queen.
It's crazy.
And that's our world right now. We're at a point where trillions and trillions of dollars are about to be sent back here as a result of the BRICS and their continued influence and growth. The petrodollar is no longer based on the U.S. dollar. Half of them.
What are you talking about?
Are trading in other dollars. And so all of the billions of dollars and trillions of dollars that's been sent to these countries to cover.
Oh, he's trying to say that a lot of countries are no longer using the dollar as the reserve currency. See how much easier that was to say, Terrence? And would have been accurate?
Their indirect form of exchange with the US dollar. They're sending their money.
But in any case, I'm getting tired and I don't want to rush the remaining 7 minutes of this podcast. So I think this is a good place to call it quits. Now, that was Terrence Howard and Billy Carson showing us some rather amazing word salad. Now, I know they think that they can actually convince people that they have something valid to offer. And I've said it before, it actually does take courage for someone as wrong as Terrence Howard is to go on something like the Joe Rogan podcast and proudly proclaim something you can easily prove wrong because it violates both the fundamental theorem of algebra and the fundamental theorem of arithmetic, as well as spouting really bad science. But I also want to encourage people to go out and learn the actual things. I want Mr. Howard to do that too. I want him to actually go back to what he apparently missed in elementary school and learn why the square root of 2 is not a rational number. I think he's like the Indiana dentist who decided that pi should not be an irrational number and almost got the state's legislature to legislate the value of pi to be a rational number. Now, eventually, it did pass the House, but the Senate quickly voted it down, saying, "We don't vote on mathematics, that's not our job." And if you are in a marginalized community where you don't see a lot of people like you in certain fields, go out and search for those people. They are there, but you have to seek them out, rather than trying to find out who they are from people who may not know about them themselves. For example, there are people I look up to like Ada Lovelace, Grace Hopper, Dorothy Vaughan, who was also a Black computer scientist, by the way, as well as being female, Sophie Wilson, and Lynn Conway. You can find these same people for fields you are interested in that belong to your ethnicity, race, gender, or whatever. Now, this was a long one, everyone. I thank you for those who stuck out. please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Hopefully, when I'm done with this semester, I can get to some videos that go back to what this channel is supposed to be about, and I'll go out and write some code.